Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the third ISWA YPG online conference, Transition to a Circular Economy, Innovation and Sustainability in Waste Management Systems. I'm delighted to be with you today on the second day of this conference, organized by the International Solid Waste Association's Young Professionals Group. I'm Mohamed Alsamet, and I'm the co-lead for the working group on research and innovation for the ISWA YPG. As the chair for this conference on its third edition, I would like to congratulate the conference committee and the ISWA YPG team for the successful organization for this conference. This conference brings together young professionals and researchers to address current challenges in the waste management sector and brings innovative ideas for sustainable waste management. As the conference title tells, Transition to a Circular Economy, the solutions to the world's biggest waste issues are by no means simple. However, circular economy contributes greatly and directly to solving these issues and contributes to the Sustainable Development Goals by either enhancing the sustainable production and consumption of materials or providing renewable and clean energy resources, and also by climate change mitigation. Therefore, closing the loops in the existing linear economies has become essential, and that can be achieved by tackling issues of waste, energy, and sustainable production and consumption in a sustainable and circular manner. And that has become now a necessity than any other time before. Circular economy does not only solve the waste issues, but it improves economies through the sustainable management of resources. In this aspect, I'm still convinced that the ISWA YPG can provide a platform for young professionals and researchers in the waste management sector to network, share ideas, discuss current issues, and bridge gaps between academia and industry. This for sure will lead to producing responsible young leaders in the waste management industry who believe in the necessity in this transition and can play great roles in achieving this goal. So we as young professionals have to be agents for accelerating this transition. Therefore, this conference serves as a platform for a global dialogue for young professionals on the transition to a circular economy. Thank you again for the organizing team, which have worked hard during the past 3 months to make this conference a success. Extra thanks go to ISWA, represented by its President, Mr. Antonis Mavropoulos, and its event manager for their kind support and for the sponsorship for this conference. Our thanks are also extended to our honorary chair, Prof. Sahadat Hossain, for his support and the sponsorship for the prize for the best presenter in this conference. We are also fortunate to have him with us today, Prof. Sahadat Hossain, to deliver an opening address. I wish you all a great conference. Let's start the global dialogue today on the transition to a circular economy. To start this remarkable event, I'm pleased to invite Ms. Rachele Chwee, the chairperson of the ISWA YPG, to deliver some highlights about the YPG before we proceed to the conference sessions. Hello, Rachele.
Hi, good morning.
Hello, yeah.
And evening, everyone. Thank you all for being here and taking your time off to join our third online conference. Today is the second day, and we had an amazing first day yesterday. Thanks again if you're joining for both sessions. I'd first like to thank our keynote speaker today, Professor Sahadat, and also presenters who've agreed to be part of this. And I'd like to give special thanks to the ISWA YPG Research and Innovation Working Group led by Mohamed, Soraya, and Shiza for organizing this event. They've worked tremendously hard on making it a success today. I am Rachele or Chwee, the chair of the ISWA YPG 2020. I'm from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and I work for the Waste Management Association of Malaysia, WMAM. In WMAM, I am in charge of managing the day-to-day operations as well as working on the business and program development side of the association. I also lead the ISWA YPG Malaysian chapter, and I've been working closely with ISWA for the last 6.5 years, and have been actively participating in YPG activities since 2017. So just to highlight on who we are as the ISWA YPG, we are basically an extension of ISWA that was established in 2013 by a group of young and passionate people. We started off small with only about 10 members at first, and now we have about 150 members from over 52 countries. In our YPG, we have 7 really active working groups, such as the local and regional chapter, online discussion meeting, marketing and communications, mentorship and career development, education, research and innovation, and finally the ISWA World Congress Special Working Group. In the past, our ISWA YPG had conducted various webinars, career talks, and online discussions for our network, which we had met with positive and encouraging replies from all our members. So till today, we continue to improve our sessions and organize more for our members. We have also established our mentorship programs, which is normally open in the beginning of the year. So do look out for it for the next intake in early 2021. This program has been super successful for our YPs as they would be able to communicate and have access to professionals in the industry to help with their careers. We have also been actively participating in the ISWA World Congresses in the past by having special sessions for YPs to discuss ideas and plans on waste management. This year, despite having a global pandemic, our team has still managed to work together to organize career talks, online discussions, mentorship programs smoothly this last couple of months, including this online conference. We had also recently launched our 2019 annual report in April, highlighting our successes and progress through the years. The report can be found on our Facebook page or our website. And in May, we had recently launched our annual flagship project called the hashtag The Face Behind My Waste. The main goal of this campaign was to highlight the people in waste management who are equally as important during the time of crisis. We wanted to showcase these people and show thanks to their great contribution. We have been receiving great content from our members and networks for the last couple of months. Some have also provided interviews asking the waste workers to share ideas to improve waste collection and separation. You can still actively participate in this campaign by sharing your content and tagging our Facebook page as well as Instagram page. With the content received this year, our communication and marketing working group is planning to have a virtual art gallery by the end of the year. So stay tuned for more information on this. And to get more information on the campaign, please feel free to give us a message or join our Facebook or Instagram page. So with that, if you are interested to be part of the ISWA YPG, do feel free to reach out to any of us, including myself, and we'd be glad to help you out. With that, I hope the program today will be a success as it was yesterday, and all the best to our presenters today. Thank you again for joining, and once more, thanks to the Research and Innovation Working Group for organizing this great job. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachele, very much for your introduction about our YPG, and we would like to extend the invitation to young professionals to join the young professionals, to join our young professionals groups under ISWA. Thank you again, Rachele. Now, ladies and gentlemen, taking great pleasure in introducing our conference honorary chair, Prof. Sahadat Hossain, who will give an opening address about COVID-19 and waste management. Prof. Sahadat Hossain is a professor of civil engineering at the University of Texas at Arlington and the director of Solid Waste Institute for Sustainability. Prof. Sahadat has more than 20 years of professional and research experience in sustainable waste management, landfill gas to energy, and landfill mining. He is also working on research, development, and implementation of innovative solutions for sustainable waste management and to provide support for waste management in USA and many other developing countries. Since 2015, Prof. Sahadat is the founding director of the Organized Research Center of Excellence, Solid Waste Institute for Sustainability. As part of the Solid Waste Institute for Sustainability's mission, he has organized sustainable waste management and landfill training program at the Winter School for participants from around the world since 2016, in collaboration with the International Solid Waste Association. Welcome, Prof. Sahadat, to the third ISWA YPG online conference.
Thank you, Alsamet, for your very nice introduction. And I'm very happy to be able to join and talk to the Young Professional Network today. In the beginning, before I start my presentation, I want to say, what ISWA YPG has done a fantastic job putting together this conference. And anytime I get into the Facebook or LinkedIn, one after another message is on YPG. So they did a fantastic job on marketing and, creating the network and telling people that something is coming. Now, when Soraya contacted me, she asked me what I want to talk about. And I think, given the COVID situation now, this is the right topic to talk about COVID-19 and its effect on the waste management, or what can we do on the waste management sector. If we go to the next slide, most of the country or world was in lockdown. Some countries now opening up the lockdown. But in between March, April, and May, there was tremendous amount of, issue with the COVID-19, and a lot of people were locked down at home. During lockdown, all the services around the globe were divided into two groups. One, essential service that needs to continue operation during lockdown. Second one, non-essential service that may discontinue during the lockdown operation. Waste collection and management are considered the essential service, even in the COVID-19. So when I went to a different cities landfill and solid waste management facilities, I saw everybody is working. So even though in COVID-19 situation, most people are paying attention to the hospitals and other facilities, but waste workers are a very essential group of people who are working, going out there every day, trying to keep the cities clean and keep people healthy. What is the waste generation scenario during the COVID? If you look at anywhere, any newspaper, you open the newspaper, you see two photos: healthcare facilities, patients. Healthcare facilities, patients. So when you look at the healthcare facilities, they are generating tremendous amount of medical waste, which also includes one-time use plastic, microfiber, pipe plastic clothes. These photos, if you look at these, most people, whatever they are wearing, they have some kind of plastic there, face mask, PPEs, body clothes, everything is made out of plastic. If you go outside the healthcare facility, if you go any neighborhood now, people walking, there is a distinct difference before COVID-19 and after COVID-19. Everyone is with face mask. And most of these face masks are made from plastic. There are some kind of plastic there. Now there is another group of people, who are generating tremendous amount of medical waste, but not in the medical. People who are COVID-19 positive, but they're mild cases. They're staying at home, they're taking care of themselves, but they're still generating, medical waste. Even though they are not considered hazardous waste, but they are related with the COVID-19. during COVID, if we go back in January, when the coronavirus started, news came in the picture. It all started in Wuhan. Even though there is a controversy where it started, we don't need to get there. But based on the information we have, all the cases that started in Wuhan, in China, and in the peak period in Wuhan, they generated 240 tons of medical waste per day, which was 6 times more than before pandemic. And if you look at all these photos, they are all managing the medical waste. Wuhan, they created one medical waste facility, new medical waste plant, and 46 more medical waste treatment plant, just to handle the waste of Wuhan. What is happening in other places? If you look at the COVID waste, during the COVID, most people are at home. So in municipal solid waste, residential waste increased by 40%. What is the reason? People are staying home, they are cooking more. They cannot go outside, they cannot go to the restaurants, and kids are at home. Everybody is at home, they're getting bored. So sometimes parents will take the kids and show them how to cook. So they are cooking, and sometimes they're making a mess, generating extra waste. Now, the second photo that I'm showing here, this is basically, some of you may know, or most of you may know, Deepika Padukone, one of the very famous actress in India. During the COVID-19, they are also stuck at home. They cannot go out, they cannot shoot their movies or something else. So what Deepika did, again, she was also cooking. In a regular time, she was not going to cook, but during the COVID-19 time, she was also cooking. The point of showing this, that most people who usually don't cook are cooking and creating extra, residential waste. What happened to the commercial waste? Most of the commercial facilities are closed, including, if you go to universities, schools, office buildings, most of them are closed. So in general, last 3 months data that we have in US and other part of the world, commercial waste decreased by 20 to 30%. There is another type of waste that people are trying to get rid of and increased significantly during the COVID-19 is plastic waste. If you look at the left side photo here, this is basically a photo from amidst, India. This is a health worker going in the neighborhood and trying to test people on the COVID-19. This is in the hospital. This is in a grocery store. The third photo here down there is a grocery store. Now, many cities in USA and around the world, they were banning one-time use plastic bag. During the COVID-19, this plastic bag, companies are very clever. They market it in a way, if you use reusable shopping bag, there is potential that COVID-19 germs may be in those bags. So if you bring them back and forth, you are basically carrying the COVID-19 germs with you. So what happened, most grocery stores stopped using the reusable grocery bag. They said, no, you have to use only one-time use plastic bag. They got an opportunity and they're making big good use of it. If you look at any news, plastic waste increased significantly since March. Now, we're talking about the waste, and we also have seen, this waste is handled by the waste workers, in China and other places. Now, if this waste need to be managed right, we need to make sure that our waste management professionals and waste workers are right. According to who, they need to use appropriate gear, includes, if nothing else, boots, hand gloves, and mask. OSHA, without sustained human-to-human transmission, waste workers are not at significant risk, but they have elevated risk because they're collecting the trash from some household, they're collecting the trash from hospitals, and we know based on the early research, COVID-19 virus can stay on the plastic surface and paper surface between 24 to 72 hours. So if there's somebody sniff, on a plastic and throw it in the trash, and trash worker collected that piece of plastic without knowing that virus is sitting there, they are going to get COVID. So we need to be very careful when you're talking about waste management professionals. David Peterman, SWA CEO, he said waste worker wearing PPEs have low chances of getting infected virus. In Texas, they said, any face mask, gloves, face mask, their disposable items should be bagged in a double bag. so that when the waste workers are collecting the bag, they are not getting infected with that virus. Now look at this. This is the waste management professionals who are working out there. Solid waste workers are trash workers, or they're doing the dirty job. They're not getting much credit out of it. They are putting their life at risk. On the other hand, if you go to medical professionals, they're treating the sick people. They're getting a lot of attention. Yes, they're treating the sick people. They're trying to save people's life. Very good. But trash worker, on the other hand, working on the source, they are preventing people from getting sick. We need to give them every credit they deserve. They usually get less attention than medical professionals and other professionals. But to me, they should get equal, credit for saving people from getting sick. This is happening in developing countries, developed countries. If you look at this left side 2 photos, they're from my neighborhood. It was a rainy day. I saw the waste collection truck. I went out there. This guy was very happily collecting the trash. This was in middle of April when the pandemic was all over the place, and it was raining. So we are all locked down. We are sitting at home. We are working from home. We are doing this and that, but they have to go out there, collect their trash. They deserve a lot more credit than we give them. In developed country, most of the waste workers, they have face masks and hand gloves. Go to the developing countries. Look at this. They're working outside, no face mask, no hand gloves. No face mask, no hand gloves. So they are basically knowingly or unknowingly putting their life in risk, and we should not let this happen. We cannot continue this practice to continue. Littering. With this, a lot of face masks and hand gloves, they are laying all over the places. And people, if you go look at the photos in California and Miami, Florida, everywhere they're throwing this face mask. And with the increase in this kind of face mask that get into the drainage system, before that, we one time used plastic bag. This was a photo from Dhaka city 2 years ago. During the rain, the entire city got flooded. Why? This trash bag or plastic waste get into the drainage line and clog the drain. So we need to be mindful of when we are throwing the trash. Now, this is something that I really want everyone to pay attention to, and I, presented it to some place, and I got into trouble. I am trying to show a trend. You can do the analysis yourself. One of the main way in Europe and many other parts of the world, waste to energy or incineration plant. COVID-19 started in Wuhan, and many people died in Wuhan. If you look at the history of Wuhan, they have 5 big waste treatment plant or incineration plant, and some of them were close to the hospital. Neighborhood. They are like 100 feet away from a neighborhood, and they didn't have enough environmental quality regulation. They broke the regulation like 150 times. People complained. They never closed the waste to energy plant. Now, what is the issue with them? They have released a lot of dioxin and cancer-causing agent from the incineration plant. They are also a major source of PM, particulate matter, tiny particles, which decreases lungs function and causes heart attack and premature death. All these PM and other dioxin material are the people who are getting affected by the COVID. They cannot survive because of their poor lungs condition. A research in Harvard found, 1 microgram increase in per cubic meter of PM 2.5 increases COVID death rate by 15%. This is based on the entire data of the USA. And PM, 2.5, they can penetrate the body easily and promotes hypertension, heart disease, and these are all complications with the coronavirus patient. Professor Francisca Dominic said, if you're getting COVID, breathing polluted air is like putting gasoline on fire. So this is really risky. Now, why are you talking about it? Look at this. In USA, in the March, this is data from April. Lot of this on the left graph, you have the waste to energy treatment plant, New York, California, Michigan. Look at the early trend of people getting affected by corona. New York, Michigan, and California area. And if you look at this chart, most people living nearby this waste to energy plant are the poor people, and they are Black or Hispanic. let's go to the next slide. You will see all the people that living next to the waste to energy plant, blacks and Latinos are dying more than other people. And they have a direct correlation with presence of the waste incineration plant or waste to energy treatment plant. So those were in Wuhan, this is in USA. Let's go to Italy. In the very beginning, we saw a lot of, in Europe, most people are dying in Italy. Now, if you go to Italy, they have 38 waste to energy treatment plant, waste to energy plant or incineration plant. Out of those, 26 of them are North Italy. Look at the cases and death in North Italy. Almost more than 75 of the reported cases and deaths are in Northern Italy. Is there a link between waste to energy plant or incineration plant and the coronavirus? There seems there is a link. Is it the only possible reason? We don't know. But we need to keep this in mind when we are talking about waste to energy plant. We need to make sure that we put the filters which can, screen all these dioxin and PM2.5. Many cases they are saying they are doing it, but they don't do it because they are very, very expensive. We need to, COVID may be gone in a few years or few months, but we need to make sure when you are designing a wastewater now, waste management plan or waste management system, we need to keep this in mind that this may contribute to the people's health and health conditions. Now, this COVID also creates a lot of opportunity. If you are a young professional, you're looking for business, there is a lot of additional medical waste, processing and recycling of plastic waste. Remember, plastic waste. This is a big problem, and anytime you hear the word problem, that's opportunity. Okay, and collection of and management of municipal solid waste. And with 2020 was washing the hand and using the hand sanitizer. If we have to clean our hand, you cannot go back to this old system of putting the trash everywhere. Okay, now this is 1 or 2 minutes I'm going to spend on SWIS. We have been doing the winter school for last 5 years, and Ray in the beginning said, and last 5 years we brought people from 85 different countries. And our main objective is to creating a lot of future leaders. And some of those future leaders are organizing this event, and they came to the winter school. Because of our activities and because of our impact on the waste management, ISWA awarded SWIS gave an award in 2019 in Bilbao. Just for everybody's information, we also created a new program, completely new program, Masters and PhD for Sustainable Waste Management. And we are also working in, I was in India, and I work with India in Bangladesh, and I have a lot of projects in Africa, especially in Ethiopia, Nigeria. And this photo has nothing to do with the presentation or the COVID-19. This is a photo, rightmost one. I went to IIT Bombay for my undergrad, and there was an alumni association meeting, and I went there last December. So this is a photo from the alumni association. Thank you very much, and it was a pleasure talking to you, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof. Sahadat Hossain, for being with us today and for this really informative presentation, which highlighted the current issues in waste management during this pandemic and the situation of waste workers. We are really appreciated for your presence with us today, especially that it is late time there in Texas. And thank you again for being with us today, Prof. Hossain.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, here we come to our first panel session on waste management amidst COVID-19, the case of waste pickers in Mexico City for this conference. And I would like to invite Shiza Aslam to moderate this panel and keynote. Shiza Aslam holds a master's degree in environmental sciences management and policy from a consortium of universities, namely Central European University, University of Aachen, and Lund University. where she developed an implementation model for the extended producer responsibility for countries with dominant informal sector as her thesis project. Shiza is the ISWA's young professional lead team member, and she is responsible to lead the online discussion group and has also initiated the ISWA regional chapter in Pakistan. Let's welcome again Shiza. Shiza, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mohamed, for introducing me to the conference. Ladies and gentlemen. Oh, I think.
Hello, Shiza. Yeah, now we can see you. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So, sorry. Okay, then I should start on. So,
yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, our panel for today will be about waste management amidst COVID-19 in the case of waste pickers in Mexico City. But before we start with the panel, I would like to introduce you to our keynote speaker and panelist. Our keynote speaker is Tania Espinosa. Tania has studied law at the University of Iberoamericana in Mexico City and has a master's degree in international legal studies from the School of Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy, Tufts University in Massachusetts, US, where she has developed her thesis about labor's right of informal workers in Mexico City waste management system. Since 2005, Tania has practiced international human rights law, and since 2013, she has been more focused on labor's right in waste picker sector. Together, linkages between human rights and waste management services, as well as the interplays between the human rights and recycling industry. Currently, she is Mexico City Focal Cities Coordinator at WIEGO, which is Women in Informal Employment, Globalizing and Organizing. Welcome, Tania.
Thank you so much, Shiza.
Before we start with the keynote and to invite Tania to deliver her panel, the keynote session, I would like to introduce you to our panelists who will enrich our panel with their expert notes and thoughts on the transition to waste management amidst COVID-19 and also the transition to circular economy with innovation, sustainability, and waste management in waste management systems. So for our panelists, our first panel is Swati Singh. Swati is a renowned researcher on waste management. She has worked in India as well as in Global South on development issues concerning sustainable and affordable waste management. Swati has done city-scale implementation projects in India on decentralized waste management in the states of Bihar, Muzaffarpur, Himachal Pradesh, and she has also worked in many countries like Tanzania, Itswani, Ethiopia and Namibia in bringing policy and implementation reforms to push the agenda of integrated waste management by circular economy concept. Presently, she is associated as a waste management expert with UN Habitat Regional Office for Asia and Pacific. So welcome, Swati, to the panel.
Thank you, Shiza. My pleasure to be here. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Our second panelist is Thomas Schultz. Thomas holds a master's degree in sustainable management from the Earth Institute at Columbia University and international management bachelor's degree from ESB Business School from Germany, and one other is from Spain. Thomas is also co-founder of Plastic Loop, an international project development organization that helps organizations and companies to become plastic neutral. Previously, he has worked as WWF's regional coordinator for plastic circular economy and has also served as a senior consultant at McKinsey & Company on circular economy, clean tech, and other sustainability-related topics around the world, focusing on highly strategic as well as hands-on operational projects. So very warm welcome to you, Thomas.
Thanks. It's a pleasure being here.
I would also finally like to welcome Fedor Jeske. Fedor is a program director at Ant Myanmar, and he works on rural and urban solid waste management in Myanmar since 2013. His main field of work includes solid waste, community solid waste management, informal recycling, primary collection, reduce and reuse campaigning and training, including surveys on plastic pollution. Presently, he's co-founding a movement on plastic pollution and transforming into a professional company working across the waste hierarchy. So welcome, Peter, to the panel.
Thank you.
And welcome, everybody. So, yeah, to start off with our panel for today, I would like to invite our keynote speaker, Tania, to deliver her keynote, which is related to waste management amidst COVID-19. Again, the case of waste pickers in Mexico City. And then after her keynote session or keynote speak, we will head off with the panel discussion with our 4 panelists that I just introduced. Tania, the floor is yours now.
Thanks, Shiza. Okay, so I want to explain this picture. Basically, in Mexico City, this is the way how the waste collection comes to the neighborhoods and rings the bell. So the citizens could know that the garbage truck is there and they can come down and put their waste in the truck. And I want to take advantage of this picture to give a very short introduction to my presentation. So although the scope of circular economy is much broader, I would like to focus my presentation on the recycling part. Because we in WIEGO consider that recycling is key in circular economy, and the integration of waste pickers in circular economy is also key. As you know, recycling is about making use of waste, reducing costs in raw materials, reducing costs in resources such as water and energy, and reducing emissions. Just as it is important that products are carefully designed so that they can be recycled, it is equally important to have a system within cities that makes recycling a reality. Said that, it is very common for governments when designing these systems to place at the center of their discourse that technological improvements or the creation of infrastructure or incentives for companies with private capital. However, they lose sight of the central actors in recycling, at least in the developing world, who are the informal waste pickers. Governments normally make them invisible and design systems that exclude them, without taking advantage of the potential that waste pickers have to increase recycling in cities, seeking to copy models from developed countries that do not apply to local context. So I want to refer to the International Labour Organization, who estimates that from 24 million workers in the sector of waste management and recycling, only 4 million are in formal employment. And the ILO also states that a greater quantity of materials are recovered by informal waste pickers than by formal companies. So, as you know, informal waste pickers often separate materials at the source. They recover materials or carry out the collection process depending on the city. They are also responsible for reintegrating materials into value chains or introducing recyclable materials into companies. Their works brings economic and environmental benefits because they also reduce the amount of waste disposed in landfills, avoiding transport and disposal costs. That is why at WIEGO we reiterate that they are key to recycling. They are key to recycling in the world and therefore to circular economy models. And not recognizing them can have fatal consequences for cities, but also for their health and their lives, which is extremely unfair. I would like to share about the case of Mexico City, specifically in household collection, since it exemplifies what I have just exposed. So in Mexico City, household collection is owned by government employees, which are in total 14,000. In addition, there are 10,000 workers who are called volunteers, who are precisely the informal waste pickers. These 10,000 volunteer workers do the same work as contracted workers. They could work in the garbage truck or sweeping the streets. And actually in the slide that you are seeing right now, if you look at it carefully, you can watch the truck and also another man sweeping the street. And however, they do not have a contract or social security, and they live off sorting recyclable materials from the waste they collect, which they sell afterwards. Additionally, they usually get tips from people they collect the waste from. Although in Mexico City, there is a regulation called Norm 24, which instructs citizens to separate waste in 4 fractions. The majority of the population does not do it. And the ones who do the waste sorting are the volunteers or the informal waste pickers. It is important to say that Mexico City produces about 13,000 tons of waste per day. And according to the Mexico City government's 2018 solid waste inventory, volunteer workers or informal waste pickers in household collection sort 1,691 tons per day out of the 8,730 tons they collect. So in other words, they recover 19%. And here the question is that if their work is so vital, why is it so hard for governments to recognize waste pickers' contributions and guarantee decent working conditions for them? So to put you in context, before COVID-19, the waste pickers in Mexico City lack of recognition. So basically, the government denies having a labor relationship with them, even though they provide a public service. That's why they are called volunteers by the government. And also, they have been historically working in precarious conditions. And that's why in 2016, the Mexico City Human Rights Commission issued a recommendation to the city government pointing out how the places where informal waste pickers work are unhygienic and that they provide their service in precarious conditions. No salary, no social security, and basically free labor. So the commission requested the government to change that. Also, the commission asked the government to conduct a census of the volunteers or informal waste pickers in each municipality. We have 16 municipalities within Mexico City to find out exactly who they are, how many they are, and how to design public policies to improve their labor conditions. And sadly, today, nothing has changed. So nowadays, with COVID, the waste pickers are among the most vulnerable workers. With the stay-at-home and isolation orders for citizens, 3 things happen. And here are some similarities with the professor's presentation. One is that there is more generation of household waste, and also the increase of sanitary waste. Second, the population noted the importance of waste collection and the importance of the work of waste pickers who have continued working during the pandemic. So in case of the informal waste pickers, they cannot afford to stop working because they need their daily income to survive. And in addition, we all realize that without their work, the health crisis would worsen. So we all realize that they are essential workers. Thus, in turn, caused risks for waste pickers. 1, because they were exposed to more waste that could be possibly infected. 2, because they continued working and in contact with people, which increased the risk for contagion. And 3, because they were already at high risk due to the lack of equipment to manage waste in normal times, and the risk increased with COVID. So although the Mexico City government issued guidelines stating that waste pickers, both the contracted ones, the formal ones, and the informal waste pickers, should use a specific equipment to avoid infection, there was no city policy guaranteeing them protection from infection. Each municipality distributed certain protective equipment, but they were not the same in all the municipalities, and there was no transparency as to whom the equipment had been given. Additionally, in the same guidelines, the government established that citizens should give special treatment to sanitary waste. For example, placing the sanitary waste in a separate bag, marking the bag with the label sanitary waste, and warning collectors not to open those bags. However, there was no proper dissemination of those instructions, and citizens did not do it. Also, there is no known policy for a special treatment of sanitary waste, which means that in addition to collectors, informal waste pickers working in sorting plants or in the final destination will be also at risk. And then waste pickers, contracted and volunteer, were not trained on how to deal with sanitary waste or how to use the protective tools provided to them. And the other thing is that there is no census or register of volunteers, so it is also unknown how many have died from COVID. So as you can see in the slide, this is a newspaper saying like the Mexico City's Human Rights Commission asked the government to protect waste workers from COVID. So the Human Rights Commission in April asked the government to protect both contracted and volunteer waste pickers from COVID contagion, but no additional protective measures were taken. And as a consequence, we can see these other newspapers that between May and June showed different numbers of waste workers that have died. At that time, there were reports of up to 94 contracted waste workers who had died from COVID. So in the slide, it says at least 94 waste pickers, but we actually are referring to waste workers, the contracted workers. But there wasn't a number of deaths of informal or volunteer waste pickers because there is no registration, so they can't know who has died. And so from WIEGO in Mexico City, we gave some recommendations to the government. And first, we promoted a campaign called Los Rifados de la Basura, something like Waste Heroes. And here is the link in case you want to enter to the English version, but you can find losrifadosdelabasura.com in Spanish. And basically in the campaign, we urged the government to mainly 4 things. One was to comply with the census of informal waste pickers requested by the Human Rights Commission. Second, to recognize informal waste pickers as workers, hire them and provide them with social protection. 3, we also call the government to, as part of the city's waste management policy, recognize informal waste pickers as key actors in zero waste programs, in circular economy models, and also as service providers. And 4th, we call the government to increase waste pickers' capacities to amplify their impact on recycling, and also to know how to safely manage sanitary or other contaminated materials in times of COVID-19. So in general terms, we call the government to protect them so that they can do their work without putting their lives in risk. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tania. That was an excellent presentation. And I can surely tell you that many of us who are working in developing countries or low middle income countries can definitely resonate with these challenges, because I think they are very same here in Pakistan, India, Myanmar, or maybe perhaps our panelists can comment more when I ask. We will get back to you perhaps during the panel discussion or in the Q&A session. For now, I'll start with the panel discussion, but before I would like to request the panelists to unmute themselves when necessary, or they may do it now. Mhm. Okay. So before getting into the transition aspect of the circular economy, I want to take a step back and perhaps ask you all, the panelists, that how do you all see the circular economy in low middle income countries? Is it just a matter of time, or how do you see it? And also, what role do the waste pickers, as Tania has just like mentioned, and the other informal sector groups in it? So if Swati, if I may start with you on that.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Thanks, Shiza, for the thoughtful question and very pertinent. I feel in low middle income countries, including South Asia, Southeast Asia, and Global South, the conversation around circular economy is still at a very nascent stage. For instance, if I talk about India, yes, we have made certain advances. For instance, the draft natural resource efficiency policy, it came out in 2019 that talked about circular economy targets for a few major sectors such as automobiles, e-waste, plastic waste, and it's guided by a few key principles, namely reduction in primary resource consumption to sustainable levels in keeping with achieving the SDGs. Also, very recently, the EU wants to work with India on circular economy. So yes, I would say it is a hot topic and it's been floating around the developing, world. However, in waste management sector, I feel to bring in circularity, we have to understand the interesting dynamics that our countries have on the ground. And here I want to bring in the informal sector, them being roughly 2% of the urban population in countries. And they have been adopting circular approaches in the most crude ways to ensure products do not remain dumped in the open, but also gets channelized to the recycling stream. So yes, their role is crucial, utmost critical, but never acknowledged rightly. And what we fail to understand is that without acknowledging and integrating the role and importance of informalities in our countries, we cannot move ahead with circularity in the waste sector per se. And that conflict is both a challenge, I feel, and an area that needs to be worked upon to address circularity in developing context. Also, what Professor Sahadat has had said that in these difficult times, the challenge of the pandemic that we all are struggling with, it's these workers who are not only keeping our cities clean, but also they are at the forefront of risk. So I feel that their importance and essentiality in our cities or countries should be acknowledged. And by doing so, yes, we can address circularity in developing world because by negating it or just by adopting international best practices or simply what the West is doing, I feel there's more angle to it, and maybe in the next proceeding questions I would like to share more about it. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Swati. That was like an holistic answer. So coming back to Thomas, to you, as Professor Sadas also mentioned that the plastic use has significantly increased during this COVID pandemic. So relating that to the circular economic context in lower middle income countries and the role of the informal sector, how do you see it?
Yeah. So in terms of the circular economy progress in general in the region here, I'm quite hopeful actually. We're seeing lots of interesting regulations that are coming into place. For example, in Malaysia, the circular economy roadmap that is soon going to be launched. Then in Vietnam, the law for environmental protection. In the Philippines, senator bills around the topic of extended producer responsibility, deposit return schemes, recycling rates or recycling targets, sorting targets, and so on and so on. So very interesting initiatives here. But yes, it's a start and it will take quite a lot of time. And we've seen how the economies in Europe, for example, are also struggling in the sense of really pushing their recycling rates up rather than just exporting their waste and considering waste as recycled. In terms of the waste pickers and the integration of them, I think this is one of the toughest nuts to crack, which one of the previous speakers also said. It's really difficult to find a way that we make sure to offer that much employment to many people and recognize their role, which is a really important role in the waste management sector. But at the same time, we also need to find a solution how to prevent the cherry picking of the recyclables that makes the remainder of the waste stream much less attractive to pick up. And I think this is really one of the biggest difficulties, where the different stakeholders need to work together and find ways to not just formalize everything and move it into large-scale waste management contracts, 20 years concessions, what we're seeing here in some countries, which the governments prefer, but rather really make use of the many skills that the informal sector already brings in terms of great waste sorting skills, the knowledge where actually the waste result, and then integrate all these different approaches and make sure that the informal sector is integrated.
Yeah, thank you, Thomas. I'll definitely come back to what you mentioned about the formalization in large scale projects in many of the countries in my consecutive questions. But before, I would like to ask Peter about how his experience has been in Myanmar regarding in this context of circular economy and the informal sector.
Yeah, I mean, I think my understanding of circularity is in Myanmar is a little bit different. So Myanmar opened to, let's say, global economy only like 10 years ago. So before that, I think the country was more or less circular. So one example, for example, from the secondary city was, we will bring our garbage to the dump site, and half a year later, we will collect it as compost for our garden. So there they had a huge amount of, most of the waste was either organic or it was well recycled or actually reused, repaired. So the whole economy around circularity was actually existing, and now due to actually the reduction or to the import of cheap new material, actually this is destroying the whole structure is actually on the way from circularity to a linearity. So that's why all the waste companies or anyone, municipalities who are collecting waste, are heavily suffering by exponential increase in waste. Before that was just not an issue. And just over the last 5 years, this becomes a very, very difficult problem to solve. So we see a lot of leakage to the environment for sure, but the informal sector who was working is similar, I think, developed as in other countries, maybe a little bit better here, maybe similar to India, I would say, but they are slowly, step by step, pushed back by actually cheap new imports, which cannot be reused, repaired in a well way, and then the recycling is not working as well anymore because it's just there is.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, definitely the issues of cheap material production and consumption is always there, but I think that also like limit our potential to recycle more and then upscale and have more cascading effects. Just to link it, this manifestation of circular economy in the context of developing countries, I want to link what Tania said in her presentation, and I just want to quote what she said. If their work is so vital, that is waste pickers and the informal sector, why is it so hard for the government to recognize waste pickers' contribution and contribute to guarantee decent working conditions? So also, like Thomas has mentioned about the EPR, and now Peter, you're also mentioning about the production and the import. So there are a lot more actors, I would say, that are involved in the supply chain, not just the government. So if we expand that role and see how this informal inclusion, or let's say the not so what Thomas mentioned as larger scale contract and giving into the more formal economy, how would that play out to be? So perhaps Thomas, you may comment first on that.
Yeah. I think governments struggle a bit recognizing the role of the informal sector because they're often not as built out as many of us know here, for example, in Southeast Asia as compared to Europe. So waste management is a topic that often is neglected a bit, as many as you know probably too. And I think the difficulty here is that politicians often prioritize topics that where you get better votes for, and waste management is not one of the most attractive ones, and hence it's neglected. So I think what's important here is that, like I said before, get the different stakeholders to work together, and this is not only the government necessarily, but also a private sector. Often we have these company alliances these days in Southeast Asia, for example, PRO Vietnam, which is an alliance of some consumer goods companies, but in addition also some waste management companies and some packaging producers. And they're always looking for pilot projects and these and to fund them. And this is not only CSR money anymore necessarily, but they're really willing to spend larger sums of money into these. And I think this is where we can also practice in the field. How would the integration of the informal sector look? And where we bring together the different actors, the national governments who really like these examples that they can see in the field and which they can then hopefully scale. Also the municipalities who are participating because it makes them proud that they're fixing their waste management and someone finally pays attention to this ongoing issue. And then also the companies, they have something to showcase of doing good in the society. And then there is the civil society organizations, and for example, the WWF is involved in setting up some of the pilot projects in Vietnam, but also across the region, and really thinking hard about how to make the integration of the informal sector happen. And I think what's important here also is, alluding to my previous point, we really need to break these structures of this thinking, which governments got from the developed world, that waste management needs to work, or that waste management only works if you award these huge contracts over 20 years, huge geographic areas, and that this is the way to go. I think there are nuances to it, and I think there would be, there are certainly lots of ideas how to integrate the informal sector here.
Okay, Faru, I want to ask you the very same question, and again, expanding the actors involved, not just the government, how the informal sector may be perhaps more recognized, or the work could be perhaps made more easier or recognized in the whole supply chain, in the downstream.
Yeah, I think the first three main points are sadly related to the government or to the local municipality, actually. So the first one is a kind of competition. So the waste pickers are taking the garbage out, the high valuable material out of the waste stream, while then the formal sector normally, additionally to their formal job, also are recycling. So during transportation, mainly during transportation, they are picking waste as well. So everything which the waste pickers take out before is not entering the, let's say, informal, formal recycling. So every formal worker next to this adds a little bit of money to their salary by picking waste. So I think this is probably one of the major parts why the formal sector is not willing actually to really integrate them. So another one, I think, is more from the social perspective, and that is something which developed maybe over many decades here, that actually these are not only marginalized people, but actually marginalized groups. In Myanmar specifically, the Hindu community. So the Hindu community is basically doing the waste picking, the organizing, all the junk shops, everything is done actually by this ethnic or by this group. So there is a struggle anyway between that group and the majority Buddhist Myanmar group. So these difficulties, these are just kind of social things which don't work very well. And the last one I wanted to say was, wait, no, I got lost. Yeah, maybe we stick to these two. I think these are the main one when it comes to the government. I don't see too much intervention from civil society here. I don't believe much, sadly, in private sector intervention. Here as well, there is discussion of EPR, PRO, however this is mentioned. I don't see actually over the last 2-3 years, I try to work with the private sector, that there is a real commitment of trying to solve anything beyond simple forms of recycling. So any way which goes into real circularity, into reuse, is, I would say, until now, a no-go from the private sector. They try to get rid of the material because they know it is going to the environment and they want to stop it. But there is no real intention and investment to actually solve the issue in a way that it is sustainable.
Sawati, I want to link what just Feder mentioned to the same question, and also what he mentioned about that the former sector per se are not like that much committed to going for beyond simply what he called recycling. And also there are a lot of people again mentioned that they do not want to go beyond the wall of their factories, which again put ethical concerns or social sustainability concerns to the circular economy, but also perhaps cause a hindrance to their recognition, perhaps, to say. If you may agree, you may comment more. Yeah.
Yeah, I think adding on to what Thomas and Fedor mentioned, some of the challenges are very similar, and I think even with India and Global South, we see similar issues cropping up. For instance, I'll just focus on India as a perspective for this question. If we look at the current context as per our solid waste management rules 2016, waste pickers have to be integrated with the on-ground waste management systems, and municipalities have to ensure that it is done by issuing of ID cards, by taking care of benefits in terms of health and regular salaries. But this is all what is happening, and I'm not even sure that it's happening in every city in the country. It's only a few cities where there have been successful attempts in integrating informal sector. When it comes to producers and formal recyclers, I feel the blockchain is similar. Many a times there's also conflict between the informal value chain as well as the formal value chain, and how do you address those modalities? The situation is a bit complex due to many reasons. First, of course, is not only for India, but with many low and middle income countries. Firstly, I feel the policy frameworks that would tie down these entities is either framed loosely or it does not exist. How do you carry out formal businesses, but at the same time ensure that informal sector, whose populations are quite huge in the country. I'm in Delhi, and there are about 16 to 17 lakhs informal workers, and about 70 to 80% of them are in the waste management sector. So because policy is loosely framed, it does not allow these stakeholders to ensure compliance by just following, they can just follow industrial mandates when it comes to recycling, but then for other things, they're not really tied down by any rule. However, what we need to do is that devise and strengthen systems on ground that look at producers and formal recyclers working with municipalities to strengthen dry waste management, the recycling stream, by integrating informal sector. That is crucial. However, for that to happen, both will and a policy backing is a must. For instance, for India, we had our plastic waste management rules that came in 2016 that talked about extended producer responsibility for the first time, that talked about integrating formal producers and recycling systems to informal sector. But it took us 5 years almost to come with the EPR guidelines that would then lay a roadmap of how it would be conducted. And when I look at that document, the new EPR guidelines that have come, it totally lacks the ground connect, because basically it's a compilation of case studies from Germany and Netherlands and the PRO systems and whatnot. But in the current context, all of that it truly lacks a ground connect, and I feel that is a major problem that is coming up across developing world. We tend to deliberate over policies and frame policies, but when you just try to print them on the ground, and when you try to envision implementation, you feel that it will not work because our systems are not as streamlined as it would be for Germany or it would be for Sweden or Norway. So talking about those examples looks good, but then pasting it in an Indian context or in a developing context is not very easy. And maybe that's why we see that there's so many loopholes when it comes to implementation or connecting informalities with formal businesses. Thank you.
Thomas, if may I go with your question first and link it what the Swati mentioned, that since you have your company as Plastic Loop, and what you do is you help companies to become plastic neutral. So could you share perhaps more about some projects in developing countries, and how have you perhaps handled these situations with the informal sector and these loopholes within the legislations and the issues with the producers and the formal sector?
Yeah, sure. So Swati, thanks for bringing this up actually about that EPR is just not something that you can copy from another country. You need to highly customize it. And we noticed also that it needs to be customized, for example, in the case of Malaysia. And we are also noticing that it might take, let's say, 5 to 7 years to have it fully customized and implemented. And that leads us to thinking about, or led me to thinking about, how do we actually, before having EPR in place, bring sufficient funding into the waste management sector to make sure that the environment can get cleaned up before, and that we can decrease leakage rates before actually EPR schemes kick in. And this is where we had the idea, or we came across the concept of plastic credits, or plastic neutrality, plastic offsetting. I'm a bit familiar with the space from previous engagements in the carbon offsetting space. Maybe you've heard about this, where if you take a flight, for example, and the flight emits CO2 into the atmosphere, you can, for example, support a project that sucks CO2 out of the atmosphere, such as reforestation or renewable energy, replacing fossil fuel-based energy generation. So you, by buying one of these emission certificates for carbon, you then acquire the right to emit carbon into the atmosphere, and you offset your footprint, you're net neutral. And this is, I think, a good way of steering money into environmental protection. So the same concept actually then also can be applied for plastic. We would set up operations, for example, material recovery facilities on landfills in Southeast Asia, and divert plastic from the incoming waste stream and find a safe disposal for it, rather than it ending up into nature, because many of the landfills, as you know, are unfortunately often whenever it rains, the plastic gets flooded into the rivers and then into the ocean, or whenever there is wind, the plastic also gets carried out of the landfill and ends up in the nature. So this is our idea. And where it comes into the integration of the informal sector, often there are waste pickers working on the landfills or waste scavengers, and the goal would be to employ them on these material recovery facilities and allow them to achieve a much higher output themselves, working under safe conditions on a conveyor belt and picking out the waste, or the plastic specifically, compared to running across the landfills and then picking the waste there, which comes from the trucks. And by installing these larger facilities, we would actually also be able to sort through all the incoming waste, because an issue that current waste pickers face is that maybe 2 trucks come in at the same time. The first truck dumps it on one spot, the second truck dumps it on the same spot, and then the plastic basically of the first truck is unrecoverable, because there's no way of sorting this, what has been covered by multiple tons of plastic from the second, or multiple tons of waste from the second truck. So this is the idea, and many of the consumer goods companies and other brands, but also individuals are interested in plastic offsetting now. And the goal would be to sell these plastic certificates or plastic credits to the brand owners or to the individuals, and then fund these projects here on landfills, for example, in Malaysia, but also on neighboring countries in Southeast Asia. What's also interesting is there's a certain standardization process going on. And we got selected as one of the pilot projects for the 3RI methodology which is developed by the renowned organization Vera. And the goal here is to really make sure that we will create safe working conditions, stable and good salaries for the former waste pickers to work in our facilities, and at the same time also comply with environmental standards and make sure that the plastic that is diverted is actually additional to what had been diverted before, rather than just counting any type of plastic to generate these credits. So yeah, like I said, I think this is an interesting project where we can steer significant funding into the waste management sector already now. And then hopefully once EPR is in place, because I believe in the concept, we would be able to transition these facilities into a functional EPR scheme and make sure that there's enough sorting capacity already established when the system comes into place.
Tania, if I just like jump to you and get you into the discussion as well. So like Thomas and Savati and everybody is like talking about EPR, and I also know that some of the North American countries are talking about EPR as well, or perhaps they call it as reverse logistics. And also, as Thomas just introduced, something like plastic credit or some formal credit schemes. How does the informal sector within Mexico or in such sectors could be involved? Do they need to be have in some perhaps a part of a member voluntary organization or some cooperatives, or they call it, or they are just doing it as their prerequisite knowledge or something like that? You need to unmute yourself, or perhaps I can do it. Yeah.
You can hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. So no, they are not part of any organization. Actually, waste pickers, specifically the ones that work in household collection, they are not very organized. And basically, the way that they used to enter to the waste picking system is through their family. So it is very common that in waste pickers, you find a waste picker that is a part of the family from a waste management worker, or it is a part of the family of another waste picker. So that's the way that they do it. They are not part of an organization.
Okay. Frederick, if I may ask you, in the same similar context, and does in Myanmar, do they work under some NGOs or under cooperatives? And if such certain schemes are introduced, let's say plastic credit or something where you need to be like formally show them how you secure your product and it's ethical and everything, how do you see that these global supply chains could be sustained? Or if COVID situation has exposed something, or the cheap production may hinder these such schemes?
Yeah, first, the structure here is similar as in Mexico. So most of the informal sector workers are part of the, let's say, the whole family of either these are waste pickers already, or these are formal workers inside the system. So they are more organized as family structures, even through the junk shops. Then and the aggregator is not that much anymore, but even through the junk shops, this is still the case. So it is more like family-based, and as I said before, these are like different more groups actually who kind of take part of this work. So they are organized in that way. There is no form of formality. And we had some NGO work in the past, but I don't think this was very relevant on the large scale for the informal sector. So I don't believe actually that there is any form of support in that way, which is significant at the moment, at least. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So when it comes to global supply chain, the problem is from the local way, everyone just survives on the money they make between buying the material and selling the material. So I think this is the critical part when it comes to all informal sectors in the developing world. So they can survive only on profit. So as Thomas was saying, there is a little bit of cherry picking for sure. So they only pick those things material out for sure where they can make a significant profit. Otherwise, they will not do it. So, and my fear now from one part, which I see now from the pandemic or from the collapse of the global supply chain or the use of actually oil, is the heavily the reduction of price of virgin plastic. So I don't see, and I would be critical with Thomas actually. So how would you set up, unless it is an EPR scheme, then I understand, but how? So the existing infra, I think, sooner or later would actually stop recycling plastic, just because the virgin material is so cheap, and they will not compete with that virgin material anymore, and then it is just dropping out of the supply chain. So before, for example, PET had in Myanmar pretty high value. Now this value is nearly down to zero. Before, because it was not internally in-country recycled, it was shipped to China, so that broke a little bit apart. They still had some smuggling routes. Okay, that was working for another year. Now this is somehow problematic. So PET is dropping to zero as a value. HDP is going a little better, PP as well. So, but all soft plastics are anyway out already. So I see a kind of step-by-step actually less usage of specifically plastic material. Metal is all fine, but paper is stopping as well. So specifically plastic, where just because new material is so cheap and producers like Coca-Cola, Pepsi, something, they are not willing to move to recycled material just because the virgin one is cheap and is easier to treat. So I see at the end, I see a problem actually on the other side, that the producers are not willing to take up this material anymore because it cannot compete with virgin material. So I think there are any informal sector solely need to rely on profit will not sustain.
Swati, if I may come to you, and as Fred has pointed out, so many potential challenges. So what could be some potential drivers that, beside all these potential challenges like cherry picking, ethical concerns, and collapse of global supply chain, market prices, how the circular economy could be adopted, some potential drivers, and perhaps some suggestions for each actor?
Yeah. Thanks, Shiza. I think, again, a very important question. I feel one barrier that needs to be mitigated in case we want to become more circular is, at policy level. And policies, I think I've been just saying it all the while, but policies which have a ground connect and are realistic, because a legislative backing is required to strengthen compliance and enforcement of circular economy in the waste management sector. So we need to introspect existing waste policies, rules, bylaws, and see how much of circularity it addresses, then change it accordingly with, by forming committees and by engaging in discussions and as per country-specific mandates. Secondly, I feel what is important is advocacy around circular economy, because everyone knows the word, and of course it's a buzzword that is used everywhere, but no one really understands it, what it means in depth and entirety. So ensure that circular perspectives are written about, civic society, research institutions. They talk enough about it, they do enough engaging reports about it, policy briefs that could be given to government regulators as submissions, and there is enough momentum around it. Third, implementation of circularity, by which I mean, looking into circular solutions on the ground, which are more local in nature. I feel what is really important to understand is that circular economy is not just a global perspective, but even in all our countries, by that I mean the developing world, there are enough local solutions that are circular in nature and that could be replicated, or those case studies could be documented. So look at incentivizing implementation wherever circular approaches are being developed, both at a local scale or in case you're bringing in any technology or for any industry for that matter. And last and the most important component, I feel, is social engineering or behavior change, because to have policies that come down into real-time solutions on the ground, if you don't have a social connect, if you don't have a connect with the layman, I feel everything will fall flat. So I feel these four important aspects are extremely crucial to implement circular strategies, to have more effective circular strategies in our countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Swati. We are running out of time. Unfortunately, I would love to have discuss more questions, but unfortunately, we don't have really much time. But as Swati mentioned, that we need to have more such cases documented. So I would just make a very short request, perhaps to each of you, that if you guys have any case study for the local, let's say Myanmar, and with WIEGO, or for the plastic group, for the plastic credit, and Swati, to you, if you could perhaps share with our audience and with all of us, so that it could be really good kind of a source for us to look up to. So now with that, I think I'll just thank each of you, Mohamed, Swati, Tania, Farah, all of you. Thank you for such a nice session. And I will just hand over to Mohamed then for the rest of the presentation and the conference. Thank you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shiza, for the great and interactive moderation for this panel session. And thanks to our keynote speaker and guest panelists for their crucial notes and highlights, which gave us insights into the informal waste sector, its workers, its integration, and its relation to health and protective gear in general, and also on the understanding of circularity in regard to waste management in developing countries and the challenges facing its adoption. And thank you again for being with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of the panel session for today's program. And now we will be having a short break, and we will continue with the rest of the session. After the break, we will be having the session on circular economy and waste management in crisis, which will be moderated by Matthew Allen from Australia, and then will be followed by the session on innovation in circular economy, which will be moderated by Mr. Mohamed from India. For now, we will have a short break, and we will get back to you in about 6 minutes. Stay with us. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the third ISWA YPG online conference. Now we are continuing our program with in the second day of this conference. Now we will be having our session on circular economy and waste management, which will be moderated by Matthew Allen. Matthew is our co-lead for the mentorship and career development team in the ISWA YPG. Besides that, he is a senior consultant and Rowtech, a waste recycling and resource management consultancy based in Adelaide, Australia. Matthew, the floor is yours.
Hello, and thank you, Mohamed, for that introduction. Welcome all. Welcome back. And my name's Matt Allen, as Mohamed mentioned, and welcome back to today's online conference, Transition to a Circular Economy, Innovation and Sustainability in Waste Management Systems. We have 4 speakers for you for this next session, which is titled Circular Economy and Waste Management in Crisis. So it's going to be very interesting to hear from the 4 speakers and what they've got to say today. Before I introduce the first speaker, you would already be aware, but for those that are just joining or are not aware, there's the chat feed on the side, and there's also a questions feed on the side there. So if you have any questions, please put them in the side feed there. And what we'll do is at the end of after the 4 speakers have spoken, we'll have a look through and ask those questions to the speakers. And because we've got 4 different speakers, it would be great if you could indicate your name and who your question is for, so then I can ask the question to the right person. So without further ado, let's get cracking on the next session. I would like to welcome our first presenter. We've got Rachele Crisales from Mexico. I believe Rachele is here with us, and her presentation is called Proposal of Solid Waste Urban Management in Gullies of Mexico City. Rachele is studying a Master's in Science and Environmental Engineering in Mexico City. She's working on a project related to urban solid waste and marine pollution. She's worked on research projects related to a range of things in the waste management space, including microplastics. And I was interested to learn that she was the founding member of a project, Microplastics in Marine Environments, which is carried on Mexican beaches. Rachele has authored and co-authored articles in national and international journals, and I'd like to formally welcome Rachele to present.
Hello, Matt. Just to mention that our list here having a connection issue, you might introduce Alvaro, and we can start with Alvaro until Rachele comes back.
Okay, so sorry about that, everyone. Rachele will be joining us later, so just keep that in mind, that introduction I said before. But we're going to move to the second speaker today. We are welcoming now Alvaro Reyes Izquierdo from Peru, whose presentation title is Landfill Mining Case Study, Energy Valorization Potential of Solid Recovered Fuels from a Peruvian Landfill. So this sounds fascinating. Alvaro has a Bachelor of Science in Environmental Engineering from the National Engineering University from Lima, Peru. And he works as an operations supervisor in a Peruvian sanitary landfill, and it takes more than 5,000 tons of waste per day. That's a lot of waste coming in. Currently, he's working as an environmental analyst as well in Barrick Gold Corporation, Peru, in the Pierina mine closure phase. Alvaro, the floor is yours.
Thanks for the presentation. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, okay. So, good day, everyone. Thanks. My name is Alvaro Reyes Izquierdo, and today I will be presenting my research titled Landfill Mining Case Study, Energy Valorization Potential of Solid Recovered Fuels from a Peruvian Landfill. So as we all know, solid waste generation around the world has increased over the last decades. And here in Peru, a country located in South America with 32 million of inhabitants, it is not the exception. So as we can see from this bar diagram, national total generation of municipal solid waste has increased at an annual rate of 1.95% over the last 5 years, going from 18,928 tons per day in 2014 to 20,437 tons per day in 2018. As we can also see in this timeline, Peru has had sanitary landfills since 1989. And over a period of 30 years, we have increased our total number of sanitary landfills from 2 to 52 sanitary landfills. Despite this big effort, our situation regarding solid waste management is not the most encouraging one. Today, only 49% of the total amount of municipal solid waste generated is disposed of in landfills. Only 1% is valorized, while the remaining 50% ends up in open dump sites, like you can see in this picture. So based on these problems, and taking into account building more sanitary landfills is not the real solution, landfill mining appears as an opportunity to reintroduce this old waste into material cycles in line with the circular economy, and a way to increase the lifespan of our actual and future sanitary landfills. So the main objective of this research is to assess the energy valorization potential stored in a sanitary landfill on the Peruvian coast by analyzing significant physicochemical properties of waste fractions that can be valorized on the waste-to-energy route, and assessing their quality and acceptance as solid recovered fuels. So the solid recovered fuels are mainly fuels derived from non-hazardous waste, produced in accordance with the requirements of the European standards. So it is important to mention that for this research, the scope only includes the combustible waste fractions for physicochemical analysis, while the remaining fractions were only taken into account for compositional purposes. So there we have the study area. It comprises a non-hazardous solid waste disposal platform, including municipal solid waste and industrial waste as well. This platform has approximately 10 years of storage, a surface of 3 hectares, and a height of 10 meters. And as we can see in this picture below from 2020, this platform is fully covered with a final cover layer. So here we have a summary of the methodology used in the present research. We first have a planification phase, which included gathering of information and the definition of a monitoring network. Then we have the excavation and the transport phase and the air drying phase for the old excavated waste. Then on the characterization phase, we included the manual sieving, the magnetic separation, and the manual sorting of the excavated waste to separate it into different fractions for compositional purposes. Then the combustible waste fractions, or the waste fractions that can be valorized on the waste-to-energy route, went through a size reduction phase and a physicochemical analysis phase on some key parameters for solid recovered fuels, like the net calorific value as an economical information, the chlorine content as a technical information, the mercury content as an environmental information, and finally, the moisture content as an additional parameter. All of these in accordance to the EN 50359 standards for solid recovered fuels. So for sampling purposes, 7 monitoring points from A to G were established. In each of these points, samples of 1 cubic meter of stored waste were collected through 4-meter deep excavations. So these excavations were mainly done by backhoe excavators, and the removal and the measurement of the final cover layer, as seen in this picture, was included. Then these samples were transported by tippers and weighted in a high-capacity balance. Then these samples were size reduced by the quarter method with a front loader, and these reduced samples were air dried during 10 days by turning them over also with a front loader. On the characterization phase, the combustible waste fractions were separated by manual sorting, including the manual sieving with a 6mm sieve and the magnetic separation of the remaining waste fractions. So after being manually size reduced by cutting and crushing, combustible waste fractions from 3 of the 7 monitoring points were selected for physicochemical analysis. And here we have the parameters and the method. The net calorific value was determined using an adiabatic calorimetric pump The chlorine content was determined by ion chromatography, the mercury content by the CVAACE method, and the moisture content was determined by oven drying. And as said before, all these parameters were compared with the EN 50,359 solid recovered fuels specification and classes standard. So here we have the result of the physical analysis of the stored waste. Some important points to highlight are the following. The average final cover layer thickness was on average 1.29 meters. Also, the sample weight per point analyzed was on average 1,342.86 kilograms. Based on the collected volume, we can say that the stabilized density past 10 years is 1.34 ton per cubic meter. And also the initial moisture content was analyzed for the collected samples, and it was on average 41.73%. As we can see in this pie diagram, the combustible waste fractions, including plastic, wood, paper and cardboard, textiles, diapers, and organic matter, also highlighted in the graph from the red to the brown color, represent 30.95% of the total excavated waste, almost the third part. And as we can see from these pictures, some waste fractions like plastic and cardboard and paper and cardboard remain practically the same past 10 years. So this third picture belongs to the fine fractions with a particle size below 6 millimeters, also known as soil-like. So after being manually size reduced, we went on the analysis of the solid recovered fuels. Now, in this first chart, we have the results of the 3 monitoring points selected, B, D, and G, for each of the parameters. And in green color, we have the corresponding class according to the standard 5,359. So in this summary chart below, we can see that this solid recovered fuels obtained from this specific Peruvian sanitary landfill has a mean net calorific value of 14.41 megajoule per kilogram. Also, the chlorine content assessed was on average 0.038% by mass. The mercury content in relation with the net calorific value had a median value of 0.026 milligram per megajoule. And finally, the moisture content past 10 days was about 4.41% by mass. We can see a reduction here from the initial moisture content of about 90%. It is also important to mention that in terms of its composition, these solid recovered fuels are mainly composed of plastics with a percentage value of about 55.53%. And we can see a picture of how these solid recovered fuels looks like. So based on the analysis and the results, and according to the EN 50,359 standard, we can say that these solid recovered fuels obtained from the stored waste in the Peruvian sanitary landfill belongs to the net calorific value 4, chlorine 1, and mercury 2 class code, and they represent 30.95% by mass of the total excavated waste. As I said, almost the third part. So this high amount or this high content of combustible fractions with an average calorific value and the low moisture chlorine and mercury content show us that landfill mining is a suitable alternative for the post-closure of Peruvian sanitary landfills, a way to increase the lifespan, an additional option for valorization of non-biodegradable waste, and a pathway to a circular economy. Also, based on the low organic content found, we can say that most of the organic fraction of the disposed waste has been degraded and classified into the fine or the over fraction past 10 years. And it is also important to mention that further studies, including washing methods and mixing with household fresh waste, must be conducted to assess their influence on the improvement of the quality of this solid recovered fuel. So before ending my participation in this event, I would like to express my solidarity to all the nations that, like us in Peru, are fighting every day against COVID. I hope a solution will appear soon. These difficult times gives us a lesson that culture and prevention of environmental impacts will be our tools for future adverse events. Thank you all for your attention. That would be all. Have a good day.
Thank you very much for that, Alvaro. Seems like there are solutions or alternatives to landfill, which is great, and we'll get to the questions later. Appreciate your overview then. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
No worries. We'll now go to the next speaker, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to introduce Gil G. Cruz Jr. from the Philippines. Gil's presentation is titled Pervious Reactive Concrete, Effective Utilisation of Waste, Gypsum and Industrial Byproducts in Promoting Green Infrastructure. Gil is currently pursuing his PhD in civil engineering at the De La Salle University and is currently the program head of civil engineering department of Bataan Peninsula State University. His research interests include solid waste management, environmental sustainability, and water and wastewater treatment. And a reminder, everyone, don't forget to put your questions in the side, and we'll get to them at the end. Thank you, Gil. The floor is yours.
All right, thank you, Matthew. Hi, everyone. I'm Gil Cruz, and today I'll be presenting my research entitled Pervious Reactive Concrete, Effective Utilization of Waste, Gypsum, and Industrial Byproducts in Promoting Green Infrastructure. So I'd like to start my presentation using this diagram. So it's about linear economy, recycling economy, and circular economy. So the current linear system, where everyday products are just made, used, and disposed of, no longer works for businesses, people, and our environment. So the ultimate goal of a circular economy is to design out waste. It's about responsible production where businesses which supply products and services get the maximum life and value from the natural resources used to make them. And a circular economy is part of the solution to our global climate emergency, one in which products, services, and systems are designed to maximize their value and minimize waste. So one of the waste problems that we're trying to address in this research is the gypsum waste. So the United States Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, estimates that there are 584 million tons of construction and demolition debris generated per year in the United States alone. It is twice the amount of the municipal solid waste that is generated per year. And of that, 13 million tons is gypsum wallboard. Only 2% of gypsum is recycled back into the wallboard. So the EPA estimates 75% of gypsum debris stems from demolition projects, while 25% comes from new construction stream scrap. So how does the circular economy work in this problem? So businesses, organizations, and industries, especially the construction industry, need to embrace the opportunities and benefits of a circular economy so that waste is designed out of how we live. A circular economy is achieved by designing products smartly with their whole life cycle in mind, by reusing and repairing them to extend their useful life, and then when their life is deemed over, remanufacturing to create new products from the old. So it's about remanufacturing old products or waste materials into high value products. So the significance of this study is, first, we wanted to promote recycling of waste materials by producing high-value construction materials. Second, we want to increase the contribution of the construction industry in the circular economy. And third, we want to integrate gray and green infrastructure. But what is green infrastructure? So here you can see an illustration showing the difference between pervious surface and impervious surface. So pervious surfaces filters and allows surface runoff to enter subsurface, while impervious surface alters the quantity and quality of the surface runoff. So pervious concrete is one of the current low impact development technologies or green technologies being employed in urban setting. So specifically, the objectives of our study is, first, we want to characterize the physical and mechanical properties of the permeable reactive concrete made out of specific recycled waste materials. Second, we wanted to investigate the removal efficiency of the permeable reactive concrete in purifying surface runoff because we know that stormwater or surface runoff is polluted by different pollutants. Third, we want to compare the infiltration rate of the permeable reactive concrete versus the traditional concrete pavement. So, in our methodology, we have identified three major waste materials. First is gypsum board from construction and demolition waste. Second is fly ash from coal-fired power plants. Third is coconut husk from agricultural waste. So we collected and pulverized these materials and subjected them to granulation process to produce granulated filtering media. This media was then used in producing pervious concrete as partial aggregate and then subjected to various testing, including compressive strength, permeability or infiltration, and pollutant removal. So after performing all experiments and tests, these are some of the highlights of the results of the study. First, it was concluded that the compressive strength of the granulated filtering media produced from three known waste materials surpassed the standard value. However, the compressive strength of the permeable concrete produced is relatively lower compared to the standard value. However, in terms of infiltration rate, results revealed that the granulated filtering media as partial coarse aggregates in our pervious concrete is also effective due to the significant increase on infiltration rate by 50%. And third, in terms of pollutant removal, based on the water quality test conducted, it revealed that the permeable reactive concrete with granulated filtering media as partial coarse aggregates significantly lessen the nitrate, phosphate, and ammonia that are present on the surface runoff by around 80 to 90%. So what are the implications of this study on the circular economy and what are the future directions of this study? First, based on the experiment that we've conducted, waste gypsum from construction and demolition waste and other industrial byproducts such as fly ash and agricultural products such as coconut husk can be recycled and transformed into high-value products. Second, the researchers recommend to integrate the use of natural fiber in making the granulated filtering media to help improve the strength and durability property of the concrete. And third, the circular economy plays a major role in promoting green infrastructure. So I think that would be all. I would like to end this presentation by saying that and by highlighting that circular economy is achieved by designing products smartly with their whole life cycle in mind. So thank you very much for listening.
Fantastic. Amazing. I'm well done coming up with those products to make that end product as well. We'll talk about that later, perhaps in the questions. But thank you very much for that summary of your work, Gil. And I'd like to remind everyone that the Q&A session will happen at the end. Please put your questions in on the side there, not in the chat group, but in the questions panel. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the next speaker. I'd like to introduce Dr. Sri Shalini Satyanarayanan. My apologies if I didn't quite get the last name there. Sorry, Dr. Sri Shalini. Your presentation is on biochar from organic fraction of solid waste for circular economy. Dr. Sri Shalini works as a scientist in the Centre for Climate Change and Disaster Management at Anna University in Chennai, India. You received your doctoral and master's degree in environmental science from Anna University, and you've been the recipient of numerous awards for your research at the international and national level. You've also authored several publications in international science journals and conferences. Really looking forward to this presentation. Dr. Sri Shalini, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Matthew. for the very good introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are virtually present. It's my immense pleasure to present my scientist project on biochar from organic fraction of solid waste for circular economy. So before getting into the presentation, I'll give a brief outline of the presentation. Like, I'll introduce the current problem, especially in India, all over the world, what is happening with respect to the municipal solid waste, and how this biochar project can achieve the circular economy and the sustainable development goals. So what is the methodology adopted for producing this biochar, and the characterization of the food waste biochar, because that is going to decide for which environmental application that biochar can be used, and later on the way forward. So this slide is not quite interesting to see, but this is the real scenario which is happening in most of the countries, especially in the developing countries. So like India, China, the most common disposal method of the MSW is the open dump sites or landfills. And when we say open dump sites, you obviously, all the environmental threat is associated with that, because we don't have a proper leachate collection system, or we don't have a proper gas monitoring system, or anything is present in the open dump sites. So the first main problem is that the emission of the greenhouse gases that is coming up from the municipal solid waste. So it has been seen that the waste sector alone has been the third most anthropogenic sector for the greenhouse gas emissions. And the next problem is the water pollution problem, because as the solid waste is discarded, and we can see the water coming out from these solid waste is called as the leachate, and these leachate enter into the nearby water streams or rivers, and that pollute the surface water and also the groundwater. And the third most problem is that the informal sector, and today even in the panelists they spoke about these informal sector people. Like most of the developing countries, is a very big problem for conversion of this from informal sector to convert them to a formal sector people. And many rules are associated with that. So for India, we have something called as solid waste management rules, where different kind of, for different waste, we have a separate set of rules and regulations. And for the municipal solid waste, we have the 2000 MSW rules, waste management and handling rules. And recently, we are updating that rules, and it is very interesting for us, because as the problems are arising, it is as per the government, we also have to update the rules, and that is what the India is currently doing it. And to address this kind of issue, we have to have a sustainable solid waste management practice, because these informal sector people, when they thrive on the solid waste for their day-to-day activities, like for earning a very meager amount, they are also acquiring the different kind of diseases coming from the vectors that is existing in these solid waste. So for us to address this kind of issue, we should have a sustainable solid waste management practice. And it is also very, the solid waste that is we are generating is around 2 billion tons of MSW, and it's going to increase around 3.4 billion tons of MSW. So for a developing country to expand the land availability is very minimal, because it has been estimated that by 2050, we have to require 1,400 square kilometer of land for disposing this solid waste. So that is not possible for us, because we are already a populated country. And you might wonder how this biochar can address the circular economy and the sustainable development goals. So that is what I'm going to tell in this slide. It's like when the moment we talk about the circular economy, many concepts or definitions or principles are associated with the circular economy. But here we are going to stick on to that, the circular economy as the resource use efficiency or eco-efficiency, that in turn will reduce the environmental pollution problems, and that help us to move towards a circular, greener, and bioeconomy. So the circular economy is going hand in hand with the bioeconomy and also with green economy. So it also addresses the sustainable development goals. So that's why I have put these slides, the circular economy and the sustainable development goals to address, which can address both the problems together. And when even the United Nations has addressed the waste management as a priority. So, but the moment we talk about the waste management, it actually addresses all the 17 goals, but especially in this project, we are addressing the 6, 9, 11, and 12, and 13, the sustainable development goals, because we are going to divert the major part of the solid waste for the production of the biochar. So the moment we are reducing the load to the dump site, we can obviously expect the emissions of the greenhouse gas is also going to come down. So that is going to address with respect of the climate action. And we're diverting the municipal solid waste to a very innovative, useful component, or like a biochar, a carbonaceous material. So that is going to address the innovative project. And as we are very responsible, like we have to control the amount of waste we produce, and we are consciously diverting it for a resource and reuse. So the moment we talk about that, we are moving on to the responsible consumption and production. So all these things, whenever we divert our solid waste from the dump sites itself, we are going to reduce all the pollution problems with respect to the air pollution or with respect to the water pollution. So we are going to have a very good sanitation. So the next is, and one more thing I wanted to say, that it's very happy to see the talks since yesterday, because it's not just one country talking about the circular economy. It's most of the countries in the world are talking about the circular economy. So that shows that we are moving on from a linear economy to a circular economy. That is quite a positive note in this pandemic situation for us. So in this slide, the left slide shows the India map, which I want to show the geographical representation of India with different states. So we can expect it is the second most populous country in the world. So obviously, when we talk about the population, the waste generation also is going to increase. So this is the right side graph, shows us the different municipal solid waste generation in different states. So we can expect the MSW generation should be high in most of the states. So that is what is happening in the different states. But here I want to show you this as a positive note, because when we want to use our MSW as a resource, so we already have a lot of resource as MSW. If we can use that as a valuable component like biochar, then we can address most of the problems related with the solid waste management. This is because the composition decides what kind of treatment we are going for the solid waste. So when we see the MSW composition of Indian scenario, that the graph, the pie chart showing at the bottom. So if you see, most of the 40 to 50% of the municipal solid waste are biodegradable, which is very good for a biological treatment or any thermochemical decomposition. So, and most of the biodegradable component is coming from the organic portion of the solid waste, like kitchen waste or food waste or yard waste. And if we can divert that part of the solid waste for a preparation of a biochar, then it will be very useful, and we are reducing the load of the municipal solid waste dump sites, and that will also reduce the post-closure monitoring period of the dump sites. So this is the methodology adopted for the biochar production. So biochar is a carbonaceous material that is obtained from a thermochemical conversion in an oxygen limited environment. So we have different methodologies for production of this biochar. So the main method is the pyrolysis, because it is economical. And in the pyrolysis technology, we operate in an inert atmosphere, that is without any presence of oxygen. And we have different types of pyrolysis technology, like slow pyrolysis, fast pyrolysis, microwave assisted pyrolysis, or vacuum pyrolysis. And very recently, they also have used laser and plasma cracking pyrolysis for the production. But these processes differ only based upon their operating conditions, like the temperature, the pressure, or the heating rate, or the residence time. So based on these conditions, we adopt for a different type of pyrolysis. So usually the fast pyrolysis will give a production of bio oil or biogas, which can further be used as an alternative for a fossil fuel. But in this project, I'm concentrating on the solid part of the component, so that is called as a biochar. So we are sticking on to the slow pyrolysis. So the slow pyrolysis is a pyrolysis technology, usually operated in a temperature of 300 to 700 degrees Celsius. And the residence time is very important here, because that differs between the minutes to several hours. So in this study, I've adopted 1 hour for the production of a biochar, and have adopted two type of temperature, like one is the 300 degrees Celsius and one is the 500 degrees Celsius, to see if the temperature variations can do any changes in the biochar yield. So, and to find the ideal temperature for a solid waste. So that's why we have operated in a different temperature mode. And the different physicochemical characterization I've carried out, like I've done all the proximate analysis and ultimate analysis, and also find out the carbon content, the heavy metal composition, all the micro and macronutrients, and also the functional groups, because these functional groups decides the physical and chemical property of a biochar when we are going to apply it for an environmental application. That is very important for us. The right side shows the initial raw, how the food waste was initially it was available, and I've collected from a kitchen, which is an uncooked waste, and further I have dried it, and after the drying I've sieved it so that a uniform composition of the end product will be available. And you can see the biochar is black in color, and the volume of the solid waste that can be produced as a biochar, it's actually, I'm reducing it to more than half the amount of the solid waste is reduced as a biochar. So physically, to see the component itself is similar to that of a manure or a soil. And the next is that we are reducing the as much of the raw solid waste to the 50% of the quantity. And now I'll talk about the results and discussion with respect to this biochar. So when we compared the 300 and 500 degrees Celsius for the yield, the biochar yield, and the lower the temperature gave the higher the biochar yield, and the higher the temperature, the lower the biochar yield. So the 300 was the ideal temperature, and this is also going to be advantageous in terms of the consumption, energy consumption, and other related, because we are using it in a very minimal temperature for the production of biochar. And in terms of the organic carbon content, usually if we can able to retain as much as of the initial components of solid waste in the next end product, then we can have a very good application in the environment fields. So in terms of the total organic carbon, it has been seen that the 300 degrees Celsius biochar is having a very good organic content when compared to the 500 degrees Celsius. And in terms of the important the nutrients like calcium, magnesium, sodium, which is very important for the plants to take that as a nutrient, is also available very high in the 300 degrees Celsius component than the 500 degrees Celsius. The next is the heavy metal composition. So with respect to the heavy metal concentration, all the 300 and 500 both gave a very good accumulation of the heavy metals. But even if we can able to present only very little amount of heavy metals, it is also very good for the plants, because some heavy metals with more than the prescribed concentration, it's going to be a disadvantage for the plants. So with respect to that, so the 300 degrees Celsius is having a very less heavy metal concentrations when compared to the 500 degrees Celsius component. So the biochar, the pH of the biochar was around neutral to alkaline condition. So with these aspects, when we apply for the environmental field, this can address most of the circular economy problem, because the circular economy starts from the raw material what we use, and then only it talks about the production or consumption and other patterns. So the first part of the circular economy itself is solved by using this solid waste as a biochar, because when we use the solid waste as a biochar, it's actually going to reduce the volume, and it is going to make it as an amendment for a soil, so that the plants can take up the nutrients from the solid waste for their growth. So that is what I'm going to show in the next slide. So this is the environmental application. So we have a climate change mitigation, and it is also used for the environmental remediation purposes. Soil improvement, so the soil fertility or the soil properties is improved, so the water retention, the cation exchange capacity, everything has been increased, and the energy production, the bioenergy production has been increased. So it is recently they've also used this biochar for a building material, because as it is having a capacity of carbon sequestration technique, like the negative emission technology, where it can absorb the carbon dioxide and it can hold it for several hundreds of years rather than letting it go. So this is going to be a very big advantage in the carbon credit or carbon pool, because they're actually, it's getting sink as a carbon sink inside the biochar. And for that purpose, especially for that purpose itself, it can be a very good market in the future for this application. And with respect to its socio-economic environmental benefits and for the sustainability, biochar can be a very good option. And as this is a very decentralized kind of waste treatment option, so in the future we are looking for a pilot projects where the solid waste of the entire city can be diverted for this biochar production, and that in turn make it as a manure to be applied in the soil, and based upon that we also increase the food production, and it also going to address the food security problem. So we hope that this will help the circular economy in a better way. And in this pandemic situation, we are also going to have several problems with respect for the segregation of the solid waste from the biomedical waste. But if we can able to segregate properly and we can able to divert the organic fraction of a solid waste for a biochar production, then we can address most of the circular economy, and we are also moving towards the green economy. So thank you, ISWA, for the opportunity for presenting my topic. And I also want to thank Department of Science and Technology for funding me for doing this project. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sri Shalini, for that presentation. Organics, huge opportunities in that space, and you've identified some opportunities there through biochar, which is fascinating. We are pushing it for time a little bit, so I'm just going to move now to our final speaker, Rachele Cruzalis. I believe you are there now. You weren't originally. I've done the introduction already, so I'll quickly just move into it and say you're going to be talking about your proposal of solid waste urban management in gullies of Mexico City. Please go ahead.
Yes. Hi, everybody. As Matt said, I am Rachele Cruzalis and I'm from Mexico City. Today, I'm going to talk to you about this research, which is proposal for urban solid waste management in gullies of Mexico City. This is the content that I am going to talk about during this presentation. First, it will be about green areas in Mexico City, specifically gullies. Then, solid waste pollution in these areas, the aim of this research, the methodology, some relevant results, and finally, main findings and proposals. Mexico is a country which is located in North America, and its capital is Mexico City. This city has around 9 million people of population and is divided into 16 municipalities. One of them is Álvaro Obregón, which is located in the west side of Mexico City and has around 750,000 people of population. Its urban area is 66% and its rural area is 34%. The green areas in this municipality include gullies that are considered environmental value areas, and they are geographical depressions that provide ecosystem services, such as flood and climate regulation, carbon dioxide fixation, erosion control, flora and fauna shelter, and aquifer recharge. However, these areas have different issues. Some of them are accelerated and unregulated population growth, vegetation and soil removal. This is in order to conform the land, direct wastewater discharge from households, and solid waste open dumps. Solid waste in gullies cause little vegetation growth, ecosystems instability, and low quality of water resources. The problem with this is that they are bad because they limit the ability of the gullies to provide environmental services. So due to this environmental issue, this research was carried out with the objective to estimate the amount and composition of solid waste in Becerra, Mixcoac, Tacubaya, and Charango gullies, and then to propose strategies for its management. The methodology of this research was divided into 4 stages. Number 1 was the identification of dumps in the gullies. In this case, roads were made along the edge and inside the gully in order to identify clandestine dumps. Dumps with free access were identified and characterized directly, and dumps with difficult access were identified and characterized through binoculars. All dumps were logged in a GPS system, and their main features were registered, for example, size, type of waste, and access. In some areas, we couldn't look inside because of the presence of military areas, residential areas, and security issues. Then all the information of the dumps was organized in a sheet spread to get a database. The number 3 was the identification of areas with a high number of dumps. It was for every gully, and at least 15 surveys were applied in these areas to adult people. The surveys include information about solid waste collection system like presence, frequency, cost, and kind of collection. And the objective was to detect problems with waste management at the neighborhoods that are located nearby gullies. And finally, all the information that was collected from the roads and from the surveys was analyzed. These are relevant results of this research. First, we can see that the highest mass of waste was found in Becerra with 3,262 tons, and the lowest mass was found in Miscuac with 289 tons. Although Miscuac has a greater number of dumps, the mass of the waste was the lowest, and that means that the dimensions of the dumps are small. On the other hand, we can see on the graphic that in terms of mass, construction waste was the most common waste category. But if we analyze this in terms of volume, urban solid waste is the most typical waste category. And this kind of waste usually come from unsuitable management practices of the inhabitants that live nearby gullies. According to the results of the surveys, the coverage of the collection service by the local government is not total. For example, around 89% is provided by the local government, but around 6% it's covered by a private service. And the rest of the surveyed residents say that they don't have this kind of collection service, and the lack of this service is because they are irregular human settlements where construction and urbanization are prohibited. So there are difficulties to access these areas that are located nearby gullies. Well, the main findings of this research was that they are unsuitable management practices of solid waste by residents nearby gullies. There are bad conditions of urban infrastructure like stairs and walkways, and there is an incomplete coverage of waste collection. Based on the previous results, we made the following proposal to manage the solid waste of gullies in Mexico City. For example, number one, design and operation of gully management programs. There is a balance between the use and the conservation of the gullies, cleaning of the gullies with the participation of residents and the local school. This will be great because it will allow to be responsible of the conservation of the gullies and become aware of this environmental issue. Number three, reinforcement of construction waste management regulation. For example, construction waste utilization plans can be established with the objective of offering other opportunities for their management. Number four, improvement of the collection service, adapting it to the local conditions. For example, review and update of collection roads, systematization of bulky waste collection campaigns. And last, valorization of organic waste. It could be through training to residents to make house compost, and also the improvement of the compost plant that actually is operated by the municipality Álvaro Obregón. Well, this is all of this presentation. Thanks for your attention, and this is my email.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that. Much appreciated, and sad to hear that some people still don't get the waste collection coverage, something that I really just take for granted, and some people around the world just don't get, which is sad. We are running out of time. We're going to move to a break soon, and then we've got another session coming up, innovation in the circular economy, which will be moderated by Mohit Samani. Really looking forward to that session. Just before we go to the break, we do have one question from Vikas Kumar, and this is directed at Dr. Shri Shalini. Anaerobic or microbial treatment is generally recommended for wet waste, so greater than 50% moisture. and more energy is required for the pyrolysis of moist waste. You were talking about pyrolysis of food, etc., which is quite a moist waste. Could you elaborate a bit on the energy considerations for sustainable biochar production using MSW waste? And just be quick because we don't have much time left. If you could quickly answer that one, would be great.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So it was, yes, I said that for the pyrolysis to operate in a very higher temperature, we require very high energy is required. But as I saw in my results, it's like I'm going to operate only at 300 degrees Celsius. For that, I think it's not much energy is required. It's similar to that of a hotter oven to be used. And also the byproducts which is coming up from this pyrolysis process is very minimal. But when you go for an anaerobic digestion technology, we have a very big problem associated with that is the anaerobic sludge. So what do you do exactly with that sludge? So with handling of that byproducts of the process is also very important. But in this pyrolysis technology, I see we don't have any crucial or any problematic byproduct, because all the byproduct in terms of biochar or bio oil or syngas that can be used as a fuel and which is having a very good environmental application process. So I hope I answered his question.
Yeah, the byproduct is often a challenging one to deal with as well. But yes. Thank you very much. We are out of time. I did have a few questions myself for all of the speakers, but unfortunately we're going to have to move on. If anyone does have any follow-up questions, please post them. I'm sure we can follow up with the presenters later and they'd be happy to answer. We are moving now into a short break, and then at 6:35 Central Europe summertime, we're going to move into innovation in circular economy, moderated by Mohit Samani. So please just take a short break now and look forward to that session in about 7 or 8 minutes time. Thank you, everyone. That was a fantastic presentation. We really appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the third ISWA YPG online conference, Transition to a Circular Economy, Innovation and Sustainability in Waste Management Systems. I believe that we have had so many interesting sessions from yesterday and today's program. And now we are approaching our last session in this conference in its second day. And we will be having a session on innovation in circular economy, which will be moderated by Mohit Somani. Just to let me introduce Mohit to you. Mohit is a research scholar at the Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi, and he is working on the visibility of landfill mining at open dump sites in India as part of his PhD project. Mohit, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mohamed, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from where you are joining us. So I am Mohit Somani from Delhi, India. I warmly welcome you all to this interesting session, Innovation in Circular Economy, of today's online conference. So before we start this session, I would like to mention to our audience that this session includes 5 presentations, and there will be a Q&A round at the end of this session. So you can submit your text questions by typing into the question interface, which you can see on the right of your screen. Please don't forget to mention your name and state to which presenter you would like to forward your query. So without further ado, I would like to welcome our first presenter, Francisca Goodman-Smith from New Zealand. Her presentation title is Understanding the Effects of Dining and Motivational Factors on Out-of-Home Consumer Food Waste. Just to brief, Francisca has researched food waste across consumer, retail, and hospitality sectors of food supply chain. Her MSc research quantified retail food waste in New Zealand. She is the industry representative for the University of Otago Food Waste Research Team. Francisca has worked and volunteered for a number of food rescue charities, and she is a New Zealand champion for UN Sustainable Development Goal 12.3. She is also a co-chair of Standards Committee for the Upcycled Food Association in the USA. Ladies and gentlemen, due to some connectivity issues, Francisca is not live now. However, she has sent us the recorded version of her presentation. So now you will be hearing presentation by Francisca.
It's a pleasure to be here today at the ISWA Young Professionals Conference to talk about plate waste reduction and insights into how consumer attitudes might influence this. Today I'll present findings from a study based out of the University of Otago in New Zealand. It's a really exciting study which informs circular solutions to plate waste reduction. The COVID-19 pandemic has significantly impacted businesses and people around the world. The hospitality sector in particular has been very hard hit by business closures and government mandated lockdowns. Cost-saving measures are going to be absolutely essential for businesses to stay afloat going forward, but they're also extremely important for customers who may have lost their jobs or reduced wages in the process. Addressing food waste is a really practical way that businesses can save money. It's also a practical way for consumers to save money. The hospitality sector is going to have to redefine itself going forward. Their offering is going to have to be different. And tapping into consumers' underlying values, really understanding those and how to drive positive behaviour change is going to be essential going forward. Understanding what these values are can help us offer circular solutions to customers in order to reduce food waste. So a little bit about the sector. 12% of food waste in the UK is attributable to hospitality and food service food waste. Most interventions so far have focused on kitchen and operational waste, the low-hanging fruit. That's happened through initiatives like the Voluntary Agreement, the Hospitality and Food Service Action Plan, and the Guardians of Grub, which are both led out of the Waste and Resources Action Programme based out of the UK. However, importantly, not all food waste produced at a hospitality and food service level happens in the kitchen. Actually, a significant amount of food waste, 34%, is caused by customers leaving food on their plates uneaten, known as plate waste. How can the hospitality sector positively influence their customers to support their missions to reduce food waste? Well, understanding what really motivates their customers is key to this. So what we know at the moment is that customers may not be aware of the link between plate waste and food waste issues and the broader societal effects of those, social, economic, and environmental. We know that food waste reduction messages are really important in how they're pitched as to encouraging the right behaviour. And we know that messaging campaigns can increase positive awareness and behaviour change. But these consumer values at a hospitality food waste level are not well understood. We think that plate waste might be affected by characteristics of the eating occasion, and that specific motivational factors for customers might encourage them to reduce their plate waste. And so we undertook this study to help understand those things. We know that the findings of the study will have really important implications for how cafe and restaurant managers form their interventions going forward and target the specific motivators that customers have for reducing food waste. A survey known as the Consumer Food Waste in Restaurants and Cafes survey was administered to 1,004 participants in New Zealand. The demographics are representative of the New Zealand population. Two specific sections of the survey were analysed in this study: the dining factors and their relationship on food waste, as well as motivational factors that encourage consumers to reduce food waste when they're dining out of home. Data was collected over a 2-week period and exported into Microsoft Excel, and the analysis was undertaken using Starter. We examined 4 different dining factors and their influence on plate waste. We examined the purpose of eating, the meal price, the eating occasion, and the length of the meal. Overall, it was found that there was a statistically significant proportion of people who reported more food waste if the meal was longer in duration, more expensive, and consumed for the evening meal. These are interesting findings, and in terms of practical implications that come out of this, it could be useful for cafe and restaurant managers to offer varying portion sizes for evening meal customers, allowing people to order course by course, and also allowing customers to order an entree as a main. This choice of menu options may help reduce food waste in the sector. We also analysed food waste, motivations for reducing food waste in the hospitality sector by sex and by age. The motivators that we looked at were saving the planet, saving money, saving hungry people, preventing guilt. Overall, irrespective of a participant's age or sex, saving money was by far the most important motivator that would encourage consumers to reduce plate waste. This was followed by saving hungry people, so social motivators, then saving the planet, the environmental motivator, and lastly, preventing guilt, which is the personal motivator. Overall, females identified that the given motivational factors would have more influence on them reducing their food waste and when they're dining out. So what does this all mean for food waste management in the hospitality sector? It means that we really understand what drives our consumers. Saving money is the most important motivator to the greatest number of people dining out in cafes and restaurants. A study in New Zealand also found that hospitality business owners were most motivated by cost savings when asked about the same 4 motivators for reducing food waste. The Waste and Resources Action Program's Hospitality and Food Service Resource Pack is an extremely good resource, providing specific targeted interventions that tap into that cost-saving motivator. There's other ways that the hospitality sector can also encourage consumers to reduce their food waste. They can positively role model food waste minimisation activity in their business. Apps such as Olio, Karma and Foodprint are designed to redistribute food that's surplus from the kitchen or in the cabinet at a hospitality level to food charities or to people to sell to people at a discounted rate. These are really exciting ways to engage with customers and encourage them to reduce their food waste. I'm going to share with you a quick video about how Foodprint in New Zealand works. Easy as that. Essentially, the business lists the surplus food they've got on an app and consumers can buy the food at a discounted rate or it gets donated to food rescue organisations. So that encourages really positive behaviour change. Other ways to encourage making zero waste the new normal in the hospitality sector are through circular solutions. In New Zealand, we have an initiative called Reuse a Bowl, where participants and diners in cafes and restaurants can pay a bond for a bowl, take food home in that, and then return it to a depot where it gets cleaned and taken back to the cafe for someone else to use. This solution goes round and round and is a really excellent way for consumers to be able to take their leftovers home with them. Other trials have happened overseas, such as Embrula in Portugal and Good to Go in Scotland, which have seen amazing results in reducing plate waste in restaurants, in fact by 42% in Scotland, by offering a takeaway doggy bag to take cafe and restaurant leftovers home in. Displaying clear instructions about how to treat the leftovers and a really easy solution that's put right in front of the customer and proactively offered by cafe and restaurant staff is absolutely essential. Positive messaging is really important. The Love Food Hate Waste campaign based at a household level is called Complete It. So that's focusing on messaging that's talking about finishing your food, finishing your meal, rather than stop wasting. So if there was a Complete It kind of campaign in a hospitality sector, this would focus on proactively offering consumers things like doggy bags, a choice in portion size, information about their portion size, ordering entrees as mains, and placing courses order by order. There's a myriad of benefits that can result from this. Positive customer perception, reductions in waste costs for the business, and cost savings for the customer. So all in all, situational dining factors do have a statistically significant effort on plate waste, and interventions should target these sectors where people spend longer over a meal, where they dine at night time, and where the dining experience is more expensive, and target those interventions that tap into consumer motivations. More customers leave food if the meal is more expensive, longer, and at dinner. Saving money was by far the greatest motivational factor for reducing plate waste by consumers of all demographics, and also, as other studies have shown, by business owners as well. This is really important coming out the other side of COVID-19, where we need to redefine the value proposition that the hospitality sector offers. Really tapping into that cost-saving motivator is going to be important. Initiatives in the hospitality sector should be circular. They should be based on principles of the waste minimisation hierarchy, ensuring that food is not going to waste, that it's going to feed hungry people by using food redistribution apps, or by offering solutions in-house for consumers to take their food home and eat later. I hope you've enjoyed the presentation and really happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Francisca, for such a wonderful and insightful presentation. As she is not live, so you can text your questions here, or you can contact her through email mentioned in the chat box. Ladies and gentlemen, now you will be hearing a presentation by Earl Gregoria from Philippines. Her presentation title is Efficient Utilization of High-Density Polyethylene Plastic Waste in Precast Concrete. Earl has a BS in Civil Engineering from Bataan Peninsula State University, BPSU. She is the president of Philippines Institute of Civil Engineering, BPSU Student Chapters. She is also the vice president of American Concrete Institute, BPSU Student Chapter. Earl, the floor is yours.
Where is my presentation? Mohit, I think there's a problem with my presentation. Thank you. Good day to our conference attendees of the 3rd International Solid Waste Association Young Professionals Group Online Conference 2020. Again, I'm Earl Gerald L. Gregorio, a 21 years old BS Civil Engineering graduate from the Bataan Peninsula State University, Philippines. Today, I will be presenting to you our research entitled Efficient Utilization of High-Density Polyethylene or HDPE Plastic Waste in Precast Concrete. Together with me in this study are Jade Maris Gino and Kyle Joseph S. Aranda. Plastic was one of the greatest inventions in the past century, but today, it is one of the greatest problems that we are facing. Globally, one of the solid waste generated in large quantities and puts high threat to the sustainability of our planet is a plastic waste. Plastic has different types based on our daily uses, and one of it is the high-density polyethylene that are used in production of bottle caps, bottle of shampoo, fuel tanks of several types of automobiles, and many more. In 2018, the global high-density polyethylene or HDPE market reached about 30 million tons, which takes up to 1,000 years before it decomposes. And with this large production, it is only 1.904% of the total plastic recycling rate. The high cost and energy associated with the waste management have resulted in this waste being deposited in water bodies. Recently, Chinese scientists have found microplastics in the deepest point of the Marianas Trench. Thus, there is a need to look for innovation to utilize this plastic waste. There have been notable attempts such as source reduction, reuse, and landfilling to reduce the critical amount of plastic waste generated annually. Recycling of plastic waste has been proven to prevent the contamination of the environment and will create an avenue to incorporate these materials for production application, such as in construction. And one of the most used building material for construction is concrete. Meanwhile, the increasing demand in the use of concrete is directly proportional to the population growth. Concrete is one of the most used building material in our generation and has been an integral part in our economic and industrial growth in almost every infrastructures like buildings, roads, residentials, and many more. Most of us uses concrete, especially in residentials, now that we are building vertically due to the lack of spaces and land to cater the need of the population, mostly the population living in the city. And one type to be specifically discussed in this study is the precast concrete. Precast concrete are building materials produced by casting in a mold and then cured in a controlled setting. However, in this study, we only focused on concrete masonry precast unit. Concrete may have been very useful to us, but the process of making concrete has also a negative impact to our environment. Its production needs huge energy consumption and release large amount of greenhouse emission. Utilization of aggregates such as the coarse and fine, or as we all know, the gravel and the sand, and the water lead to the decrease of natural resources and probably may lead to the water contamination. In this study, we focus on the main component of the precast concrete, which is the fine aggregates. The fine aggregates strength fully relies on the strength of the precast concrete fully relies on the fine aggregates because it doesn't have coarse aggregate in it. And with the acquisition of fine aggregates, it also threatens the natural biodiversity through river dredging and sand mining. Recently, there are studies that aim to replace the fine aggregates with plastic fibers, and the present study aims to incorporate HDPE plastic in precast concrete mixture as a partial replacement to the fine aggregates. So moving on to the methodology of this study, HDPE were collected, segregated, and cleaned before shredded and molded. So in this study, there are two forms of HDPE. They are shredded and they are melted. And they will be used as a sub-aggregate for the precast concrete. And those shredded and melted HDPE were mixed with the concrete mixture as a sub-aggregate for it. And since this study focuses on the efficiency, parameters like concrete strength and other properties were observed, and also how the volume of HDPE in two forms affected. Concrete mixture samples were subjected into mechanical testing such as the compressive strength test and observation of bonding or cohesive property due to the scanning electron microscope. And with this, here are the results of the study. First, for the compressive strength test, as you can see in the left side of your screen, the gray one is the controlled specimen, or it is also the concrete hollow blocks with fillers. The green one is the concrete mixture with expanded polyestyrene, or as we all know, the styrofoam. The pink one is concrete mixture with shredded HDPE, and the blue one is the concrete mixture with melted HDPE. The black line indicates the standard strength of concrete for masonry block, and as you can see, in the 55% replacement, shredded HDPE passed the standard strength test, and on the other hand, all of the percent partial replacement of melted pass also the standard strength. And on the right side of your screen is the scanning electron microscope used to observe the bonding and cohesive property of the mixture. And here is the picture of the shredded and the melted. This is a photograph sample at 200 micrometer. So just for a visualization of 200 micrometer, our human hair has a maximum diameter of 181 micrometer. So this photograph shows as little as that. So as you can see, both shredded and melted HDPE showed great cohesion property with the concrete mixture. So in terms of the plastic recycling, it may address the low recycling rate of the global plastic waste. It may not be that big of an impact, but I believe that as we progress in it, as we use it, in the near future, it will create a big impact in the environmental effects, which the utilization of plastic waste create a positive impact to the environment, as the waste that threatens their environment and biodiversity may be utilized and be useful until it decomposes. Also, for the sustainability part, in the past decades, we progressively aim for the economic and industrial growth. But along the way, the environment is being compromised. I believe that we must progress with our environmental and natural resources and make this world sustainable for the future. And for the concrete innovation, HDPE plastics as sub-aggregate addresses the problem in the sand acquisition that threatens the non-renewable resources that are acquired during the sand mining. So the implications of this study, the researchers recommend to use the shredded HDPE plastics as sub-aggregate. Why? Because it has lesser carbon footprint. And with the higher volume, it has a stronger concrete. We have built a prototype of it, and with the concrete hollow block size of 4 by 8 by 16 inches, we have utilized 2.5 kilograms of HDPE in one block. And secondly, plastic waste may be utilized in a way that it will not threaten the environment, but be useful. Thus, the efficient utilization of plastic waste for construction applications will not only conserve the marine environment, but also reduces the overall environmental threat that the production of this plastic imposes. Lastly, waste management contributes to the sustainability, environmental, and economical part. And with this innovation comes with lesser and in the near future, a zero waste plastic consumption. All of the innovation and the management that we are doing right now might be a waste if we continue to consume the plastic and then utilize it. It's like going in circle or in a loop. For me, the essence of utilization of plastic waste is for impact reduction until we moderate the volume of the plastic here in the earth. Again, I'm Earl from the Philippines, advocating in utilizing waste, innovating structure, and ensuring the future. Thank you.
Thank you all for this insightful presentation. Indeed, this study is very topical. As a reminder, you can still submit questions through the question pane. So ladies and gentlemen, now it's the time to hear a presentation by Aima Iqbal from Pakistan, whose presentation title is Incorporation of PET Plastic and Fly Ash to Enhance the Compressive Strength of Construction Material. Aima is a young and enthusiastic environmental engineer aiming to work in the field of sustainable development. She is graduated in environmental engineering from Pakistan's top engineering university. Her research focuses on making waste management a profitable business. Aima, now the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mohit. Hello, everyone. This is Aima, and I'm here to share my research, which I did in my bachelor's final year project. And it was basically the use of PET plastic, that is polyethylene terephthalate plastic, in fly ash to enhance the compressive strength of construction material. Let's get started. So what was the basic problem? There were two basic problems. First was the plastic pollution, and the second one was fly ash pollution. So what's the problem with the plastic pollution? With the increase of single-use plastic, the use of plastic has drastically increased over the past few years. According to a survey by Statista in 2019, they claimed that 563.4 billion units of plastic bottles were produced in a single year in 2019, and the rate is expected to be doubled by 2020. So what is the problem with plastic pollution? The basic problem is with their disposal. Because of their insufficient disposal, because of their insufficient disposal, they negatively impact the human health through the introduction of microplastics. They also upset the food chain because they goes into the bodies of lower species of food chain, and then they bioaccumulates as they reach to the higher species. Obviously, they call groundwater pollution and land pollution, and they also kill marine species. You have like multiple times seen it on social media or read articles about it, that they get stuck around the necks or in the bodies of the marine species, and then they kill it, which disturbs the food chain and the ecosystem balance. Now coming towards the fly ash crisis. So Pakistan is basically a developing country, and a lot of development projects are being underway. Pakistan is rich in coal. That's why it uses coal to generate electricity. Most of the power plants in Pakistan are using coal to generate their electricity. So what is the problem with coal power plants? The basic problem is the fly ash. Fly ash is basically the residue that is left after the combustion of coal. So the basic problem is with their disposal. Their disposal is very expensive because it is highly rich in toxins and heavy metals like arsenic, chromium, lead, and mercury. A study by Zahari and his fellows claimed that 0.2 million tons of fly ash was produced in 2019. They basically used the modeling strategy to come up with this value. So what is the harmful effect of fly ash? Because they are like very fine particles, they can easily go into your body through inhalation and ingestion by mouth and deposit in your lungs, where they can cause lung cancers and other respiratory disorders. They can also go and contaminate the groundwater and cause arsenic poisoning. Now, what the solution I came up with, I thought of incorporating the PET plastic bottles and fly ash into construction material. By the way, I am working with mortar. As in the previous presentation, my fellow was working with concrete. The difference between mortar and concrete is that in concrete you use aggregates, while in mortar you don't use aggregates, it's just in the form of paste. Now the methodology that I used, I collected the PET plastic bottles from my own university and then I cut them off into small pieces. I melted those pieces in muffle furnace. It came into the bullet form, solid bullet form, and then I crushed those bullets into fine powdered form. Then I found the optimum ratio of cement and water. Then I made the composite of cement, fly ash, and fine plastic by mixing them in Hobart mixture according to a standard of American Standard and Testing Materials, code C305. Then I poured the freshly made mortar into molds. I left them for like 24 hours and the next day I unmolded them and put them in water for curing. And then I performed testing on them. The results that I obtained were, first, water to cement ratio. As you can see from the graph, the water to cement ratio of ordinary Portland cement was 26%, while that of cement and fly ash and cement, plastic and fly ash was 25%. The percent of the last two composites are same because plastic is inert, it doesn't require water, whereas if you compare cement and fly ash, the water demand of fly ash is less than that of cement. Now coming towards the composite strength, you can see from the graph, the least strength is of cement. If you add fly ash in cement, the compressive strength increases, and if you add plastic in fly ash and cement, the compressive strength further increases. Now here comes what percentage of plastic can be added. So as I performed my research, I found out that you can add plastic as a partial replacement of cement by 1.5%, because when I added 2% of plastic, the composite became brittle and it became more prone to cracks. So you can add 1.5% of plastic with fly ash and cement to make a construction material that has the highest compressive strength among these. Now coming towards the cost estimation. So the average dimension of construction brick according to the American Standard and Testing Materials is 8 x 3.6 x 2.25 inches. In Pakistan, the average weight of clay burnt brick is 3.4 kg and it costs around $0.054 to $0.065 per unit, means one brick. When I did the cost estimation of my project along with my supervisor, it came out to be the weight of the brick that I made with the use of plastic and fly ash and cement was 3.1 kg, which means that it was 0.3 kg less than that of the clay burnt brick. Also, the cost was reduced to $0.03, which means that $0.02 per unit can be reduced. Now, this is only for one unit, but if you apply this project on commercial scale, you can see a significant amount of decrease in the cost. Now, coming towards the outcomes, sort of conclusion. So, what were the outcomes? I, along with my fellows, developed a construction materials that caters for plastic pollution and fly ash pollution, has a higher compressive strength than that of the conventional construction materials. It also requires less water, is cost effective, and is lightweight. This is the SEM analysis that I performed of the final composite that was formed out of cement, fly ash, and plastic. These encircled particles are plastic particles. These needle-like structures are fly ash, and the solid material is cement. This is how these three materials bind with each other. This is some of the references that I have used in my presentation, and thank you for listening. I'm open to questions.
Thank you, Aima. It was indeed a very interesting presentation. Well, I have a couple of questions, but I think we should take all the questions in the Q&A round. So, ladies and gentlemen, now we have come to the fourth presentation of this session. And now let's welcome our fourth presentation, ISWA 10 from Malaysia, whose presentation title is Biodiesel Synthesis Using Catalyst Derived from Waste Palm Empty Fruit Bunch Impregnated with CaO and FeCl3. ISWA 10 is a lecturer in the Department of Chemical Engineering at Curtin University in Malaysia, Sarawak campus. She has worked as a customer project engineer in XFAB Sarawak for 2 years. Before pursuing her postgraduate studies in chemical engineering at UNIMAS, she has worked as a chemical engineer lecturer with strong teaching background who strives to create an engaging learning environment. Dr. Tan, you may start your presentation now.
All right, so good day, everyone. I hope that you are able to hear me right now. I'm Dr. Tan Ihua, who is presenting Curtin University, Malaysia, and my title of presentation today is Biodiesel Synthesis Using Catalyst Derived from Waste Palm Empty Fruit Bunch Impregnated with Calcium Oxide and Iron Trichloride. So why waste palm empty fruit bunch? Is actually a kind of waste solid which is gotten from the oil palm plantation. Okay, we all know that it is not used in the oil palm extraction and discards as the solid waste. So it can be reused as the catalyst in biodiesel production instead of doing some wastewater treatment. Right, so proceed with the research background. Why biodiesel? Why biomass? So here we can know that we are currently maybe having the energy crisis. All right, there is a high energy demand in industry, especially during the current years, and the current supply may not be able to meet with the energy demand in future. So biodiesel is an alternative renewable energy resources over here to cope with the energy demand in future. Another issue will be happening in future would be the environmental pollution. Fossil-based diesel produces more greenhouse gas emissions such as carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide when compared to biodiesel. Because biodiesel itself, it has a greater content of oxygen content. That's why it produces a cleaner combustion than the fossil-based diesel product. Right. The problem statement over here is for the current conventional biodiesel production, it requires a difficult separation process due to the generation of byproduct, or you can say that all of the liquid biodiesel mixture here is all in liquid form. So in order to ease the separation, we can incorporate the solid catalyst over here. All right, so move on to the next point, generation of wastewater during the separation stage. As you can know that through the biodiesel production, it will produce a side product called glycerol, or the common name of it is a salt. So in order to purify the biodiesel, you will need to use a lot of wastewater to wash the byproduct itself together with the excessive catalyst, which might be the corrosive catalysts such as potassium hydroxide, sodium hydroxide, and they are usually not recoilable. All right, and this also will be increasing the water turbidity if left untreated, as we know that we are going to clean the biodiesel mixture by using water. So the water itself will be in a milky form as it contains a salt inside it, and it will affect the microbial population in water if left untreated. Okay, and then the last problem statement over here is it requires additional process to treat the wastewater, as we know that since we are using the sodium hydroxide, potassium hydroxide, they are all alkaline, so they are having a higher pH. We cannot discharge this particular wastewater through the stream directly. We have to treat it. Okay, so next move on to the objective over here. So the main objective over here is to synthesize the basic magnetic heterogeneous catalyst, which is referring to the solid catalyst to use empty fruit bunch derived biochar. So this empty fruit bunch, it will be using as the raw material to produce the biochar. Right. The second objective over here is to evaluate the characteristic of the synthesized catalyst to correlate with its catalytic activity. The third objective over here is to determine the optimal reaction condition. And lastly, it will be reusability of the octane catalyst. So move on to the research methodology. You can see here, my main research over here is to synthesize the basic magnetic catalyst with pyrolysis. Pyrolysis means combustion without oxygen using empty fruit bunch with this respective ratio. Okay, and we varying the calcium oxide weight percentage as 30%, 40%, and 50% for 900 degrees Celsius. And this particular carbonization will be happening for about 2 hours. And next, we were going to categorize the catalysts, and we are going to incorporate the Takuchi level 9 design by varying temperature, catalyst loading, reaction time, methanol to oil ratio, and in order to search for the optimal reaction condition. So we move on already to the third stage of this particular biodiesel synthesis process. And lastly, we are going to check on the reusability of this particular magnetic biochar catalyst. Okay, and I also include a small picture down at the right-hand side for you to refer. So move on to the result and discussion section. This is the result obtained from the scan electron microscope, which called SEM. You can see there is 3 photos over here: 30 weight percentage, 40 weight percentage, and 50 weight percentage of calcium oxide. And through the red circle, this is referring to the 400 magnification. You can see that all of the pores of the empty fruit bunch is actually loaded with the calcium oxide and also iron 3 chloride. And if you're referring to the part B, okay, part B is referring to 10,000 magnification. This is the surface of that particular catalyst already, the empty fruit bunch. You can see that at 50 weight percentage of calcium oxide is actually overloaded already. Okay, it forms an extra layer on this surface, and it might be easily to chipping off when the biodiesel production process is ongoing, because it is a stirring kind of process. So move on to the next result. Right, by referring to the EDX, which called the energy dispersive X-ray spectroscopy, okay, there is an element table for 30 weight percentage, 40 weight percentage, and 50 weight percentage over here. We are focusing on the Fe, which is the iron element, and also the calcium element. We can observe that for 30 weight percentage and 40 weight percentage, they are eventually having a higher content of iron and calcium comparing to 50 weight percentage of calcium oxide. Why? Because as just mentioned just now, okay, this particular 50 weight percentage of calcium oxide catalyst is overloaded with calcium oxide, so it can be easily chipping off from the surface. Okay, move on to the VSM. VSM is actually referring to vibrating sample magnetometer. Okay, BET is referring to Brunner-Elmer-Taylor test, and also carbon dioxide temperature program desorption. This table is referring to the result obtained from these 3 catalysts. And we observe that for 30 weight percentage of calcium oxide loading, it has 5.5 times higher basicity and also magnetization for this particular catalyst. While for 50 weight percentage, it has a greater BET surface area, but unfortunately in our study over here is focusing in the magnetic basic solid catalyst. That's why we are choosing 30 weight percentage of calcium oxide to do optimization. Okay. So how can we perform the optimization over here? The optimization is done by using the Takuchi L9, is referring to level 9 design. So using this signal to noise ratio, the larger the better. Okay, we are plotting the main effect plot of SN ratio, and we can observe that the optimal reaction condition is at 65 degrees Celsius, 3 hours, and 10 weight percentage catalyst loading together with 12 to 1 methanol to oil ratio, which can produce the biodiesel yield of 56%. Alright, so move on to the last part of my study. We're checking on the reusability study of the catalyst, which is using the optimum operating condition, which we have covered just now. Okay, you can see that the first cycle is 56% over here, when at the third cycle, the biodiesel yield is actually dropped to 36%. It's dropped to 36%. And this is causing a difference of 20%. Why? This is mainly due to the clogged pores. Okay, when the pore is clogged by the byproduct over here, can be the glycerol, so it can be deactivate the catalyst itself, or there is a second reason of it. It may due to the leaching of the active site. Active site here is referring to the calcium oxide at the surface of the catalyst, which has caused the reduction in the biodiesel yield. Okay, so move on to the conclusion and recommendation. So conclusion, we can mention that we actually have successfully synthesized the magnetic anti-fruit bunch biochar catalyst. And we have also obtained the optimum reaction condition using the Dakuchi level 9 methodology. And we also have reused the catalyst itself up to the third cycle, which result in 36 biodiesel yield. And there is a publication arise from this work, which is a review paper. And these are the references. So thank you very much for your time in this. I will hand the session back to Mohi.
Thank you, Dr. Tan, for this detailed and informative presentation about your innovative project. So ladies and gentlemen, now we have come to the last presentation of this conference. And please be reminded that after this presentation, we'll be having a Q&A round. So now let's welcome our fifth presenter, Noor Iltizam Zahari from Malaysia, whose presentation title is Converting Palm Shell Waste to Effective Adsorbent Using Green Solvent for CO2 Capture. Just to brief, Noor has received her Bachelor of Science with honors in Applied Chemistry from Mara University of Technology, Malaysia in 2018. She was appointed to a current role as a research assistant in the Research Center for Carbon Dioxide Capture and Utilization at the Sunway University. Currently, her research interest includes developing green solvents and novel adsorbent derived from waste material for CO2 capture, utilization, and conversion to value-added chemicals and adsorption processes using activated carbon. Noor, you may start your presentation now. Over to you, Noor. Can you hear me, Noor? I think we have lost the connection. Noor? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, you can start.
So where's my slide? Okay. Can I start now? Hello.
You can start now.
Okay. Good day, everyone, and welcome to my presentation. As you can see on the screen, our topic today is converting palm shell waste to effective adsorbent using green solvent for carbon dioxide capture. Okay, this research is very relevant to the Sustainable Development Goals, SDG, namely SDG 13, which is to take urgent action to combat climate change, and SDG 12, which is encouraging industry, businesses, and consumers to recycle and reduce waste, ensure a sustainable consumption and production patterns by 2030. The safety limit for the carbon dioxide emission is supposed to be 350 ppm, but however, the emission of carbon dioxide increased from 350 ppm in 1998 to 416 ppm in June 2020. Since emission of carbon dioxide exceed the safety limit, this will lead to global warming as it gradually increase the atmosphere temperature. In order to make sure the emission of greenhouse gas at controllable level, capturing and separation technology required in order to reduce the carbon dioxide concentration. Among various technology available, post-combustion combustion for adsorption solid have been identified as a promising method due to its low-cost material, ease of preparation, and high carbon dioxide adsorption. And activated carbon have been extensively applied in carbon dioxide capture technology as an adsorbent because of its advantages such as high carbon content, large surface area. However, the drawbacks of the use of commercial activated carbon is its high price, and many researchers have been focusing on developing adsorbent using inexpensive material with high carbon content. Physical or chemical activation methods are commonly used for adsorbent preparation, but chemical activation more preferable due to its ability to produce high adsorption capacity and increase the surface area and develop more pore structure. The DES, deep aesthetic solvent, were documented as an innovative green solvent with extra advantages like being low cost, low in toxicity, and less environmental impact. Therefore, the objective of this research is to synthesize novel deep solvent, which is DES, and novel solvent were used to modify of activated carbon to produce novel adsorbent for carbon dioxide capture, as well as to determine their carbon dioxide adsorption capacity. My research workflow is divided into 4 main sections. Firstly, preparation of green solvent using DES, which is choline hydroxide with glycerol and choline hydroxide with urea. The mixture will mix with variable molar ratio until homogeneous mixture obtained without any precipitation occurred. Ratio 1:3 for choline hydroxide with glycerol and 1:0.3 choline hydroxide with urea was selected as it formed clear liquid without precipitation. Secondly, preparation of modified activated carbon from palm waste from using impregnation method. Thirdly, the novel adsorbent were characterized for their textural characteristic and surface morphology using BET surface area, FISM, and EDX. Lastly, study on breakthrough adsorption and regeneration performance. As can be seen in Table 1, A and B refer adsorbent modified with choline urea and choline hydroxide urea and choline hydroxide glycerol. The BET surface area and pore volume of DES-based activated carbon with choline hydroxide urea was higher compared to adsorbent modified with choline hydroxide glycerol. As can be seen in Table 2A and B, nitrogen element was observed in DES-based activated carbon, possibly due to the presence of choline hydroxide, which has nitrogen in their molecular structure. This finding confirmed that nitrogen was successfully attached in the surface of the activated carbon, thus more active sites become available for carbon dioxide adsorption. After impregnation with DES in Figure 2A and B, a highly porous structure and large pores were obviously seen in morphology structure. Okay, based on Figure 3 and Figure 4, it was noted that breakthrough becomes shorter and steeper at high temperature, indicating that the adsorption process is an exothermic reaction which describes the phytosorption. The maximum adsorption capacity obtained was at 25 degrees Celsius, which is 29.2 milligram per gram for adsorbent modified with choline hydroxide urea at a flow rate of 200 milliliter per minute. Low temperature provides more number of active sites to be attached by carbon dioxide molecule and enhance the adsorption performance. For figure 3 and 5 and figure 4 and 6 demonstrate the relationship of gas flow rate. The highest adsorption capacity and breakthrough time was found to be low at flow rate of 200 milliliter 200 milliliter per minute. This attribute to prolonged breakthrough time, which enhance maximum adsorption performance, thereby increasing the diffusion coefficient. Okay, this is the result for regeneration. Regeneration is an important aspect to stimulate the adsorption capacity of the exhausted adsorbent for carbon dioxide capture. Adsorption and desorption experiments were carried out for a total of 10 cycles. For modified activated carbon with choline hydroxide and glycerol showed a good regeneration ability up to 10 cycles. Meanwhile, for the modified activated carbon with choline hydroxide urea, the rapid drop of adsorption was noticed beginning from first cycle. However, the adsorption value from third until 10 cycle were maintained. Table 3 lists out the comparison of carbon dioxide adsorption capacity with previous works. The analysis shows that modified activated carbon with choline hydroxide urea could capture carbon dioxide higher than the reported work. So as a conclusion, DES as green solvent provide beneficial impacts to the environment, waste management system, and cost-effective material. As a result, this study can cater to environmental issues as well as provide long-term sustainability. In this work, DES-based activated carbon was synthesized as a new green solid adsorbent for carbon dioxide capture. This result show that the presence of amide group in the modified activated carbon was responsible for enhancing carbon dioxide adsorption. The result revealed that among the activator studied, choline hydroxide urea was the best activator, which showed a superior carbon dioxide adsorption capacity of 29.2 milligram carbon dioxide. The adsorbent showed it is good for reuse and can be recycled over 10 adsorption-desorption cycles, and thus is cost-effective for carbon dioxide capture process. For the future work, more types of DES can be explored as an activating agent into activated carbon or other materials to study their performance in capturing carbon dioxide. Okay, that's all for my presentation. Thank you for attention.
Thank you very much, Noor. So, very well, ladies and gentlemen, now we have come to the Q&A round of this session. I would like to request all the speakers to unmute yourself. We'll take few questions quickly. So I think the first question is from Earl or Aima. I don't know because both have similar topics. So the question is about construction material built with plastic, how the compression strength characteristics of the material behaves with varying temperature compared to that of without plastic. Earl, would you like to answer this question?
Hello. I really wanted to answer the question, but unfortunately, it isn't part of the scope of our study. I wanted to answer the question in scientific basis, but then again, it is not part of our study, but it is noted that we will include that for our future study.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Earl. Now I think the next question is to Dr. E. Why did you prefer Taguchi level 9 over other optimization methods? And also, how did the biochar impregnated with CaO and FeCl3 performed compared to CaO or FeCl3 alone or CaO plus FeCl3? Dr. E.
Alright, so hi Nimas, Kochi is the most simplest method and cost-saving method than the usual response surface methodology, which requires more experimental data to determine the optimal operating condition. So your second question, the calcium oxide is currently performed better than the proposed catalyst, as this is just a primary study at the moment. And for iron chloride, it doesn't really perform better than the rest of the catalyst because it's just iron chloride.
Okay.
I hope this answers.
Thank you, Dr. E. So my next question is to IMA. IMA, as you have mentioned, fly ash obtained was very hazardous in nature. So did you do some investigation on the hazardous potential or contamination potential of the bricks made up of fly ash plus cement? IMA, please unmute yourself.
So I did not perform the hazard analysis of the produced material, but I did do it with the fly ash before putting it into the material. And in Pakistan, so basically there are two types of coal. One is imported from South Africa, and the other one is we take our natural resources and take it out. So basically, the coal imported from South Africa, it was very rich in arsenic. And also, like, I'm an environmental engineering student, so I can tell that when you cure the produced material in water, some of the arsenic leaches into the water. So you basically have to treat the water of curing before disposing it off. But I don't know if some arsenic keeps in the material, construction material keeps in it. I'm not sure about it because that wasn't the part of the project. But that's a very valid point, and I'll look into this.
Thank you, Aima. So now we have come to the end of this session. Again, a very big thanks to all the participants for such an incredible and interactive session. And a big thank you to our audience from around the world who have joined us for the conference. Just as a reminder, the 3 best presentation will be announced on Tuesday, that is 21st of July in our website, and they will be contacted by email. The first winner will have a scholarship to SWIS ISWA Winter School 2021, and the second winner will get a 2-year full ISWA membership, and the third winner will get a 1-year full ISWA membership. Also, all the presenters will get their certificates of participation sent to their emails, and their abstract will be published in the conference book, which will be available in our website soon. The conference for both the days has been recorded, and the links for the recording will be sent to your email in due course. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we have now come to the end of 3rd ISWA YPG online conference, that is Transition to a Circular Economy, Innovation and Sustainability in Waste Management Systems. On behalf of all the organizers and committee members, I would like to express my utmost gratitude to all the distinguished speakers, presenters, audience, and members of this floor for making this event a success. Let us all be guided by all the things we have learned throughout the conference and be able to see and influence our future. We seek your forgiveness for our shortcomings, if there are any, throughout the conference. Till we meet next year, may all of you remain safe and happy. Thank you. Bye-bye.